Chapter 336. The group had been busy the entire night, and it was now close to dawn. Due to the delay in entering the palace, it was already dawn by the time they arrived at the palace. Chu Qingyan and the others were arranged to enter a side chamber as soon as they alighted from the carriage. Lao Bai appeared in front of them not long after they left the side chamber. Masters, His Majesty has gone to attend morning court, and has instructed this old servant to take good care of you. His Majesty understands that you didn't rest well last night, and has allowed you to rest first. He will summon you in the afternoon. Lao Bai conveyed His Majesty's words. Xiao Su nodded in understanding. Lao Bai arranged for the palace maids and eunuchs to serve them, then excused himself. Ethereal, tell me what else happened last night. When only the few of them were left in the hall, Xiao Su raised his eyes to look at his subordinate standing not far away. He had sensed that Ethereal had something to say last night. Cheng Yanluo was stunned by Xiao Su's question. She bit her lip and felt that the dust had settled. Because of Xiao Su's question, she recalled what had happened last night. It could be said that it was vivid in her mind. She couldn't help but glare at the person beside her, warning him not to speak carelessly. Ethereal wasn't surprised by his master's question, but he was surprised that the person who hadn't looked him in the eye since last night was suddenly glaring at him. He suddenly felt a little pressured. Ethereal nodded at his master, then recounted how he had been drugged with the same drug last night. He only skipped over the entanglement between him and Yen. Chu Qingyan heard this and glanced back and forth between the two of them ambiguously. In the end, after Yen Luo rolled her eyes at her, she withdrew her gaze and turned to the person beside her. Your Highness, I think this incident was done by the same person. The timing and drug match, but I can't figure out the motive behind this. I don't know if they want to deal with Gentleman Beauty or Ethereal and the others. Chu Qingyan mused. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows after hearing her analysis. Go on. Since Big Ice Cube had spoken, she didn't hesitate and continued. I think His Highness is the first to be ruled out because we just arrived in Junlan and no one knows our whereabouts yet. Those thieves can't have noticed us so quickly. Moreover, if they want to deal with His Highness, it won't make sense to implicate Ethereal and Yanluo. If they want to deal with the princess, then the previous reason won't make sense either. Are you saying that the culprit is after us? Cheng Yanluo was slightly surprised. Turin, Huiling, and the others nodded. We think that what the young princess consort said makes sense. Chu Qingyan nodded and asked, Sister Yanluo Ethereal, have you offended anyone? I'm not blaming you, but if we can find the culprit as soon as possible, if they really want to deal with you, we'll have nothing to worry about. At this moment Ethereal, who was deep in thought, spoke up. The young princess consort is right. Actually, I have my suspicions too. He paused and looked at his junior sister, who was not far away. Yanluo, don't you think that the method of making this poison is very similar to that of a person? Initially, Cheng Yanluo had intended to ignore him. However, under the watchful eyes of so many people, she decided not to bicker with him for the time being. After pondering for a while, her eyes suddenly lit up. I remember now. It's Seventh Uncle Master. He loves to study these unorthodox and extremely potent poisons. But he left the sect a long time ago because he made a mistake. When you entered the sect, he was already gone. How did you know? Ahem. Ethereal coughed softly. Under Cheng Yanluo's suspicious gaze, he replied, I've studied the medical books he left behind. Cheng Yanluo snorted coldly. Evil people like to study such things. Ethereal knew that his junior sister had misunderstood him, but he didn't explain. Instead, he turned to his master and the young princess consort and said, Back then, I heard from master that 7th Martial Uncle was expelled from the sect because he reported him. I was just wondering if he held a grudge and transferred his hatred to me and Yanluo. But if that's the case, there's one thing that doesn't make sense. If the culprit's target was Ethereal and Miss Cheng, why would he poison Master and Junmei? Huiling raised an objection at this moment. Chu Qingyan smiled when she heard this. If our guess is right, the reason why he poisoned Junzime was probably because he wanted to kill her so that he could take advantage of the chaos and escape. Because he dared to harm the princess's guest, what awaited him was the princess's punishment. Hence, he might as well go all the way and get rid of everyone. Chu Qingyan paused at this moment. Junmei has sealed off all information about us. I'm guessing that the culprit is living in the princess's residence. What an interesting deduction. Lao Bai's voice sounded at the door. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. This person was really haunting her. Is there anything else, Lord Lao? Xiao Su asked. It's like this. I just received news that the culprit who tried to harm His Highness and the princess has been caught. It's the doctor in the prince's residence, Sun Qi. The interrogators used some tricks to pry open his mouth. Indeed, as the young princess consort had deduced, he held a grudge against His Highness's subordinate and junior sister. That's why he dared to assassinate them. At this point, Lao Bai looked at Chu Qingyan with admiration. The spies sent to investigate the King of England did not mention anything about this 10-year-old young princess consort. His Majesty also did not take her seriously. It seemed that they had all underestimated this young princess consort. It seemed that the people around the King of England were not to be underestimated. Chu Qingyan felt that this minister of imperial household's eyes were twitching. He kept looking at her. Could it be that flowers were blooming on her face? It's really him, Uncle Master Sun Qi, Qing Yanluo said angrily. Ethereal sighed. Back then, when the sect expelled him, I thought he would turn over a new leaf. I didn't expect him to go from bad to worse. It takes 3 years to learn well, but only 3 days to learn bad. Chu Qingyan sighed. Seeing that the matter was settled, Lao Bai did not stay any longer and left. Hualing gave her a thumbs up. Young princess consort, you're really amazing. You can even deduce this. Everyone nodded. The young princess consort did have an amazing ability to deduce things. Even Xiao Su gave her a look of admiration. Chu Qingyan coughed a few times. I was just deducing according to common sense. This time, it was a blind cat that caught a dead mouse. Everyone couldn't help but laugh because of her words. The matter of the princess residence had come to an end. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. However, they were currently in the Junlan Imperial Palace. Who knew if there would be another princess residence? After a night of torment, Xiao Su ordered them to go back and rest. Hualing and the others accepted the order and left. When no one was around, Chu Qingyan looked sideways at the person beside her with a worried expression. Xiao Su looked at her standing there in a daze and couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you going back to rest?" Big Ice Block, do you think the king of Junlan Imperial household has an ulterior motive for letting us enter the palace? She looked at him seriously. Chapter 337. Xiao Su looked at the worried expression of the person in front of him and curled his lips. Why don't you try using your inference again? Pooh. She had just been trying her luck. Now that it involved 2 countries, even if she had 2 brains, she could not see what Junzi Sheng, who was born as a ruler, was thinking. Big Ice Cube, was he teasing her? But the Big Ice Cube was still in the mood to tease her at this time. Did this mean that things were not as bad as she thought? She walked behind him and placed her hand on his shoulder, skillfully massaging him. It's a good thing that you only used a bit of your true qi during the ethereal inspection. It's a good thing that you controlled it, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. Chu Qingyan said as she moved her hand. No matter what happens in the future, don't use your true qi. I won't allow you to hurt yourself like this. Chu Qingyan did not realize that once she was worried about someone, her true nature would be revealed. It was not the calmness that a 10-year-old girl should have. If others were to see this, they would definitely think that Chu Qingyan was too calm and steady, which did not suit her age. But Chu Qingyan was very lucky in that she met Xiao Su. He was a person who had self-control and intelligence that surpassed his peers. He was strong and powerful, so in his eyes, Chu Qingyan's actions were reasonable. She was not a young bird under his wings, but a young eagle that could fly with him. And it was because of Xiao Su's attitude that Hualing and the others were used to this kind of Chu Qingyan. Or it could be said that in their eyes, a 10-year-old little princess should be like this. Only then would she be worthy of their powerful master. This was what many people said. Strong when you met the strong, weak when you met the weak. Birds of a feather flocked together. Once the people around you were outstanding, you would unknowingly follow their example. Being outstanding would become a habit in your heart. Thus, The reason why Chu Qingyan had unknowingly revealed her true nature was actually because she had been influenced by Xiao Su and Xiao Laiqi. Slowly, she revealed her true nature and no longer suppressed it. If the person she met was not Xiao Su, but someone mediocre, then she would be living a repressed life. She was afraid that she would stand out too much in front of mediocre people and become a suresway monster in the eyes of others. This was the importance of choosing someone to accompany him. I know what I'm doing. Xiao Su found it a little funny. No one had ever reminded him over and over again like she was a child. And he was the one. However, for the past 20 years, the words that he should have heard at that age were now ringing in his ears. Xiao Su was somewhat self-deprecating. What was even more ironic was that the person who had warned him was still a child. However, after he mocked himself, he felt even more pity for the person who gave him warmth at this moment. Haha, don't keep saying that to me. If we hadn't arrived in time, you would have been surrounded by Gentleman May's soldiers. At that time, even if you grew wings, you wouldn't be able to escape. Chu Qingyan poked his shoulder in disappointment. Big Ice Cube, don't forget that having martial arts now is equivalent to having no martial arts. You can't be so impulsive anymore. Don't I still have you guys? Xiao Su's lips curled up. The little fellow was becoming more and more long-winded. She even dared to criticize him. Chu Qingyan choked. She felt that today's Big Ice Cube was simply too handsome and adorable. Normally, if she wanted to hear him say something like this, she would have to wait until the sky started raining red. The little fellow did not reply. However, Xiao Su continued, Gentleman May violated this prince's taboo. Don't tell me I'm going to let her do whatever she wants? When he thought of Gentleman May's various pretentious gestures last night, he felt that it was simply an insult to his eyes. What taboo do you have? Chu Qingyan was more concerned about this question. Mysophobia. I don't like people coming close. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she subconsciously looked down at her hands. When she barged into Wild Goose Courtyard last night, she had tripped and her hands were dirty. She didn't even have time to wash them before she hugged the Big Ice Cube. She was really glad that the Big Ice Cube didn't send her flying with a slap. Moreover, he didn't seem to blame her for needing his hands at such a close distance. Chu Qingyan silently wondered if she had a special existence in the Big Ice Cube's heart. You should go sleep. Xiao Su didn't know that the person behind him was in a daze and told her to go rest. She was still growing. Not sleeping for an entire night would definitely affect her growth. Chu Qingyan wasn't sleepy at all. She shook her head. I can't sleep. I don't feel confident. She spoke honestly to him. Xiao Su was silent for a moment. Sleep here for a bit. This prince will accompany you. He knew that after experiencing so much, her heart was still a bit uneasy. Chu Qingyan knew that once he spoke, it would be very difficult to change his mind, so she could only agree. She lay down on his bed and covered herself with a thick brocade quilt. Big Ice Cube, I think the people of Junlan know how to live their lives. Whether it's food consumption, it can be considered meticulous. For example, the bed she was lying on was soft and warm. The material was also close to the skin, so it was very comfortable to lie on. Close your eyes and sleep. Xiao Su didn't comment on her evaluation. Instead, he ordered her methodically. Chu Qingyan was a bit dissatisfied. I might not be able to fall asleep if I close my eyes. When she said this, she blinked and smiled. Why don't you tell me a story? Maybe I can fall asleep listening to your voice. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Really? Chu Qingyan nodded vigorously. More silver than real gold. Xiao Su was very helpless at her nonsensical words. After getting up, he took a book and walked back to the bed. Chu Qingyan was a bit curious. She didn't know that the Big Ice Cube actually carried a storybook with him. If she had known, she would have read it on the way to save herself from boredom. When Xiao Su sat down and opened the book, she narrowed her eyes to see what was written on the page. There seemed to be numbers. 316 stratagems? After reading it, she was completely dumbfounded. He told her this after covering her with the quilt? Big Ice Cube, don't you think that this is a bit inappropriate for the occasion? She was going to sleep, not to attend a class. Isn't your point about listening to the voice? Is the content of the story important? Xiao Su seized on her words just now and turned her words around. Chu Qingyan was speechless. You win. It's not important, it's not important. Please continue. Chu Qingyan smiled embarrassedly. Xiao Su looked at her defeated expression and couldn't help but smile. It was a pity that a certain someone was only focused on being sad and was destined to miss this beautiful moment. After Xiao Su flipped open the book, Chu Qingyan, who had closed her eyes, suddenly opened them. She looked at the person above her seriously and said, Big Ice Cube, I'm telling you, don't hit my sleeping acupoint in the future. Otherwise, if there's a fire somewhere and an assassin breaks in, I'm afraid I'll die in a deep sleep. Xiao Su was amused and helpless by her description. Okay, I won't hit your acupoint unless it's absolutely necessary. A gentleman's word is as good as a whip. Chu Qingyan raised her hand to hit his. Xiao Su looked at her small hand and didn't know what to think. Finally, he reached out and touched her hand. Okay, teacher, you can start the class. Chu Qingyan closed her eyes. Xiao Su was helpless against her mischievousness. Today's first class would be a diversion. Calculating the time, Ji Junqing should be here after the class. Chapter 338. When Xiao Su's deep and mellow voice sounded in the room, Chu Qingyan felt a strong sense of sleepiness hit her. Originally, she wanted to talk to him, but in the end, she couldn't resist the warmth of the quilt, the tiredness of the past few days, and the reassuring voice. Hearing her shallow breathing, Xiao Su didn't immediately stop. Instead, he insisted on finishing the story. By the time he put down the book, the person on the bed had fallen asleep peacefully. He turned around and coldly looked at the person in the room. Your Majesty, don't you know to knock before entering other people's rooms? Hearing this, Jun Zixing said matter-of-factly, I'm afraid I'll disturb your study. Otherwise, if I wake up your little princess consort, the gains won't make up for the losses. Halfway through, he felt Xiao Su's oppressive gaze. Jun Zixing paused, then naturally lowered his voice. He really couldn't tell that he really cared about Chu Qingyan. Xiao Su took the lead to walk out of the room and into the main hall of the side chamber. Jun Zixing looked at his natural and smooth steps and sighed. This was originally his palace, but now it seemed that he had become his guest. Xiao Su casually sat on a chair on the side, leaving the main seat for him. When you entered the palace today, it was already time for the morning court, so we didn't have time to receive you. If there's anything we haven't greeted you well, please forgive us, King of England, Jun Zixing explained with a smile. Your Majesty is the ruler of a country, so you should prioritize national affairs. This one is just passing by Junlan, and has no official business. Your Majesty doesn't need to worry too much. Xiao Su's words were, in fact, saying, if you're busy then go ahead. I have nothing to do, so you can let me go. How could Jun Zixing not understand the meaning behind Xiao Su's words, but he pretended not to understand. I'm busy with national affairs, so I'm really overwhelmed. I kind of miss our battle at Luoyan. Although it was a bit difficult at that time, at least there was anticipation and passion. Now, Jun Zixing let out a long sigh. You're in your position, Xiao Su said calmly and didn't say anything else. Jun Zixing did not expect him to be so perfunctory. He thought that after listening to his words, he would at least have a few comments. Then he would have a chance to extend the topic, and then lead to his final goal. Unfortunately, this person had never played by the rules on the battlefield. Today it was the same. Gentleman Sheng pondered for a moment, and then said, let's not talk about this anymore. King of England, why did you suddenly appear in Junlan? And why didn't you say hello to me? Although we were enemies back then, didn't we reconcile in the end? We can be considered as friends who have gone through life and death together. I didn't want to stay in Junlan, but I ran into an accident. In his eyes, he and Jun Zixing were not friends who would go through life and death together. If they were friends who had gone through life and death together, they wouldn't have addressed each other as Lord and Minister. Jun Zixing smiled. The accident you're talking about is my sister, right? She's liked you for many years. What she did is indeed a little too much, but it's reasonable. I hope that King of England won't be calculative with my sister. She's still young and has no sense of propriety. Please be magnanimous and don't take it to heart. If Chu Qingyan was present, She would definitely give Junzi Sheng a good scolding. What did he mean by reasonable? Did liking someone mean that he could monopolize them like this? What did he mean by she was still young and had no sense of propriety? She was already 16 years old, and was at the age of marriage. In modern times, she was an adult with full criminal responsibility. In order to protect his sister, Junzi Sheng was really willing to say anything. I've never cared about unimportant people. Your Majesty, you're worrying too much, Xiao replied calmly. However, Junzi Sheng didn't care about his men attacking the princess's residence at night, because he wanted to do him a favor. Xiao knew that in his heart. Since he had already decided to show himself, there was no need to beat around the bush. Your Majesty, if we want to leave Junlan safely, what are your conditions? Junzi Sheng was still thinking about how to open his mouth, but he didn't expect him to bring it up first. Junzi Sheng thought to himself that sometimes he really couldn't understand the person in front of him. When he asked him to continue the topic, he avoided it. Now, when he didn't mention it, he took the initiative to expose it and hit the nail on the head. It was like this 2 years ago, and it was the same today. He simply couldn't speak properly. However, he was also open-minded. If he could understand the person in front of him, then he wouldn't have lost so miserably back then. Well, since the King of England has spoken, I'll tell you the truth, Junzi Sheng said with a headache. 2 years ago, you also knew that our Junlan wasn't as beautiful as it looked on the surface. In fact, it was already torn apart. Ever since my father was assassinated in the palace 5 years ago, he was poisoned. The poison was too strong. The imperial doctors used all their abilities, and could only delay his lifespan by a few years. From then on, the court began to fall into chaos. Several imperial uncles used their power to recruit most of the officials in the court. The entire Junlan was not scattered, but its spirit was scattered. At this point, Junzi Sheng's voice was a little gloomy. So 2 years ago, when the generals were at their most prosperous, my father sent me to the battlefield to establish my prestige. Although I was defeated, I won back some people's hearts. Unfortunately, it was a drop in the bucket. Now that I can take over the throne, it can be considered a daunting experience without any danger. If it weren't for his father's thoughtfulness, the country would have changed hands before he passed away. Xiao glanced at him and said casually, since your Majesty has taken over the throne, you should find a way to win the hearts of the officials and shoulder the mission your father gave you. If it could be as simple as saying, then I wouldn't have had such a headache for so long. Junzi Sheng shook his head with a wry smile. Xiao was a little impatient. Then what does your Majesty want me to do? In the room, Chu Qingyan was half asleep. She turned her head in confusion and only saw the book on the side, but the person just now was nowhere to be seen. She patted her cheeks. Where did the big ice cube go? She counted the time. She had slept for more than an hour and slept really well. At this time, she faintly heard someone talking. She lifted the quilt and got up, put on her coat, and walked slowly to the source of the voice. She went around the door, yawned and stretched. She recognized that one of the voices was the big ice cubes. She was happy and was about to go in when she heard an unfamiliar voice. The imperial uncles are domineering in their respective territories. They have troops and don't take me seriously. I'm afraid that they will attack the capital in a few days. I hope that you, King of England, can help me take back the military power in the hands of the imperial uncles and get rid of future troubles. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she instantly woke up. What kind of joke was this? You let the big ice cube, the lord of another country, interfere in your country's political affairs. Are you sure you're not making things difficult for me? Wasn't this joke a little too much? Chapter 339. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she almost wanted to rush over and fight the Emperor of Junlan to the death. Big Ice Cube was poisoned, so he wasn't suitable for God of Fortune. Moreover, what did the affairs of Junlan have to do with them? If they delayed any longer, they wouldn't even have time to go to Jiang. They didn't have the time to deal with other people's troubles. But just as she was about to step into the hall, she stopped in her tracks. No, when Big Ice Cube learned that the Emperor of Junlan had summoned him to the palace, his expression was very calm, without a trace of surprise. Moreover, when she asked about the Emperor of Junlan today, he wanted to be at ease. Could it be that he had already guessed that the Emperor of Junlan would appear? Chu Qingyan retracted her foot. She couldn't be impulsive. No matter what scheme this gentleman Sheng had. She didn't want to cause trouble for Big Ice Cube. If she messed up Big Ice Cube's plan, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. At this moment, the conversation between the two of them sounded again. Your Majesty, do you think I have the ability? Xiao Su asked. The King of England of Sichuan Kingdom, Xiao Su, is brave and good at war, resourceful, capable of governing the country and stabilizing the country. Gentleman Sheng recited the rumors outside. When he saw Xiao Su frown slightly, he smiled slightly. King of England, I'm not exaggerating, but if even you can't do it, then I'm afraid I'll have to watch Junlan be divided into pieces. Xiao Su didn't respond. Gentleman Sheng didn't care and continued. King of England, don't be modest. I know very well what you've done in Sichuan. Xiao Su looked at him. Gentleman Sheng saw that he had attracted his attention, and continued with a smile. You're the noblest prince in the Sichuan dynasty, but you're also the prince with the most awkward status. Your father dotes on Consort Yu and the fourth prince, so he delegated all of his power to Consort Yu's maiden family. Anyone with a discerning eye knows that the Sichuan emperor is biased. However, very few people can see one thing clearly. That is, how did Empress Liang's family, who is not favored by the emperor, reach their current position and be on equal footing with the Fu family? At this point, Gentleman Sheng took a deep look at Xiao Su. If it weren't for your efforts behind the scenes, slowly leading the Liang clan into the imperial court and consolidating the Liang clan's position, if it weren't for your successive campaigns and accomplishments, how could the Liang clan and Empress Liang exist today? Xiao Su pursed his lips. Your Majesty, you flatter me. I'm not as brave and powerful as you make me out to be. Gentleman Sheng shook his head with a smile. What's more admirable about you is that your actions are rarely noticed by others, but you're able to achieve your goals little by little. Xiao Su, I've never admired anyone in my life, and you're the first one. I've known since we fought 2 years ago. Xiao Su was indifferent to Gentleman Sheng's words. He had heard such words too many times. However, this wasn't what he wanted, just like how he didn't want to do those things. Your Majesty, you've said so much because you want me to agree to help you. Xiao Su didn't show any courtesy to him just because he was the emperor. Gentleman Sheng's expression stiffened when he was mercilessly exposed. However, he was an emperor after all. Adjusting his emotions was the most basic skill, so he quickly regained his composure and said with a smile, King of England, you can think that way. Xiao Su leaned back in his chair leisurely and said with a faint smile, Your Majesty, why do you think I'll help you? Gentleman Sheng cursed inwardly. Xiao Su dared to threaten him because he needed him. However, what annoyed him was that he had no other choice but to ask for Xiao Su's help. Because this morning, he had already received a few reports from the troops under his imperial uncles that were restless. This matter could not be delayed any longer. I can promise to block the news about you in Junlan. After the matter is settled, I'll let you leave Junlan and send you safely to the border of Jiang Kingdom. As for Zimei, I promise I won't let her harass you again, Gentleman Sheng said after careful consideration. However, after he finished speaking, Xiao Su didn't show any emotion. He still looked at him calmly, so he felt a little uncertain. He had never been able to figure out Xiao Su. It was the same in the past. 2 years had passed, and it was still the same. Junzi Sheng gritted his teeth and said, I know your current situation. You must have a plan to hide your whereabouts. But you made a lot of noise in the princess's residence. If I hadn't ordered a lockdown, your whereabouts would have been exposed. Although I really don't know why you are going to Jiang country, but to be able to get my order to escort you all the way, it is much faster and more reliable than you traveling alone. Last night, you and Zimei could be considered to have shed all pretense of cordiality. If she wakes up, she will definitely not let it go. He fixed his gaze on Xiao Su. I've solved all your worries. Isn't this what you want to hear? At this time, Xiao Su said slowly, I want information on all the vassals, from childhood to adulthood. Don't leave out anything. Also, I want a map of Junlan, information on all the ministers in the court, and the people they've been in contact with recently. I won't wait until today. With a cold voice and a cold order, Gentleman Sheng seemed to have returned to the battlefield. He raised his long sword, as cold as the Grim Reaper, but incomparably majestic. He responded belatedly, "Okay." In the end, Xiao agreed. "Before tonight, I'll have all the information sorted out and sent to you." Gentleman Sheng stood up. Although he had ceded territory and paid compensation and lost the face of the emperor, he didn't regret it. He looked at the alienated and indifferent Xiao in front of him and forced a smile. "King of England, I hope you don't blame me for using such means to keep you here. I wouldn't have chosen this method if I didn't have to." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't get a reply from Xiao. Although he was a little disappointed, it was also reasonable. "I'll take care of Zimei's matter. I won't let her disturb you at this stage." Gentleman Zixing glanced at him. "I'll leave first. You have a good rest." "Farewell, Your Majesty." Xiao stood up, his expression still indifferent. Gentleman Sheng smiled bitterly. He knew Xiao's character very well. The fact that he could still be so polite to him was simply a special treatment. He couldn't force anything. After Gentleman Sheng left, Xiao sat back in his seat, but his expression was as cold as before. "Come out. Aren't you cold standing there?" Chu Qingyan suddenly heard him speak. It was obvious that other than him, she was the only one in the hall at this time. She scratched her head and walked out from the side door, puzzled. "How did you know I was hiding there? This king's martial arts were restrained, but I didn't lose it." "Fine." She thought that the big ice block sensitivity had decreased because of the poison, but she didn't expect it to be the same. "Big ice block, can you really help that Gentleman Sheng? This is a mess." She was worried. Chapter 340. What do you think? Xiao didn't answer. Instead, he threw the question back at her. Chu Qingyan bit her lip when she heard this. She lowered her eyes and pondered for a moment before looking up at him. "You've never done anything that you're not confident in. So this time, do you already have a plan?" Xiao was surprised to hear her say this. There's no such thing as confidence in anything in this world. There's only the choice of whether you're willing to do it or not. She didn't understand what Big Ice Cube meant. Seeing that she was a little confused, Xiao thought that perhaps the image he had built for her had affected her view. In fact, he wasn't omnipotent. Not everything in this world could be planned out. Sooner or later, he wouldn't be by her side. She also needed to have her own wings to fight against the wind and rain. He felt that this was the right time to correct her view. Some things may be difficult, but as long as you're willing to do it, even if there's only a 1 in a million chance, you can still grasp it. Whether you do it or not depends on the choice. If you choose to do it, then success depends on the right time, the right place, the right people, and here. He stretched out his index finger and pointed at his head. Chu Qingyan understood immediately, so she understood the meaning of his words. It was precisely because she understood that she was even more worried. In fact, the political affairs of Junlan were very tricky for Big Ice Cube. How could a person from another country be able to handle the intricate political relations of his own country? But in order to be able to take everyone away, he chose to accept Gentleman Sheng's conditions. So no matter what, he would do his best to solve it. Chu Qingyan felt a little sorry for the person in front of her. He was poisoned, but he still had to worry about these things. Yen Luo had already warned him not to worry too much. Otherwise, there might be accidents. That's very difficult, isn't it? What about the vassal king of Junlan? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but ask. Xiao looked at her and softened his tone. "I'll do my best. Is there anything I can help you with?" Chu Qingyan volunteered. "As long as you're obedient," he replied without thinking. I'm serious, not joking with you." Chu Qingyan was helpless. She was really not a child, and she was very obedient, okay? "Yes." Xiao suddenly said with a serious face. "What?" Chu Qingyan was filled with anticipation. She also hoped that she could help Big Ice Cube a little, and not worry about it all day. He looked into his eyes and said word by word. "Eat your fill for 3 meals, don't be picky. Remember to go to the calligraphy room and read books." Poof. She was really talking about serious matters with him. How could he tease her again and again? Chu Qingyan crossed her arms, looking gloomy. Looking at the smoke coming out of the little fellow's head, Xiao was very clear that he had pissed her off. The little fellow was cute when she was angry, but when she was angry, it was quite torturous. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a weight on her head and a chuckle came from above. There is something I need your cooperation on right now. Chu Qingyan gave a cold snort. She did not know what he was going to say to tease her. The little fellow did not respond. It seemed like she was hit by his first 2 sentences. He curved his lips. This king is tired, go and read a story to this king. As soon as his voice fell, she blinked in disbelief. Big Ice Cube wasn't joking, right? He wanted her to read him a bedtime story? Snow in June? Red rain falling from the sky? The sun rising in the west? Or did she hear wrong? But when she saw the book in her hand and the person lying on the bed in front of her, Chu Qingyan finally recovered from her disbelief. It seemed like it was not snow in June today, but Big Ice Cube's personality changing. But she still seriously flipped through the book, reading it word by word. When she was studying, she had participated in many poetry recitations and storytelling competitions. She always came in first place, so it could be said that she was very familiar with this matter. Today's story is about besieging Wei to save Xiao. In 354 BC, the Xiao country attacked the Wei country. The clear voice had a bit of a childish tone to it. Listening to it, it was like a flowing stream. The voice was gentle, and it immediately brought people into the story. Xiao slightly hooked his lips, and then closed his eyes. Perhaps he could still rest today. Once the information was presented, he would not have time to enjoy the peace and tranquility at this moment. The voice reading the story became softer and softer, intermittent, until it finally disappeared. Xiao opened his eyes and looked to the side. The person who had been alive and kicking just now had fallen asleep leaning against the bedpost, and the book in her hand had slipped from her fingers onto her lap. Winter afternoons were very cold. If the weather was good, the sun's rays would still carry some heat, but this kind of heat often made people sleepy, and she just happened to be sitting in the position where the sun shone in, bathing her whole body in the warm sun. Xiao looked at the peaceful expression on her face, and could not bear to look away. In the past, he had never paid attention to other people's frowns and smiles, or what other people showed. In his eyes, it was like looking at flowers through the fog, separated by a layer. But every time he saw the joy, anger, sorrow, and joy on the little fellow's face, he felt that it was very fresh and very nostalgic. Every time he saw her sleeping peacefully, he felt that the years were peaceful and the flourishing world was stable. Unfortunately, he was unable to give her true peace and stability. From the time she entered the Fu until now, all she had suffered was unexpected misfortune. If it was not for that imperial edict, she would still be that carefree young girl in Mao village. Perhaps I will not be able to give you stable years in my life, because my life may be very short. But don't worry, I will let you leave in advance. Xiao picked up the person leaning against the bedpost, and placed her on the couch. He carefully covered her with the blanket, and then sat down on the chair. He raised his hand to caress her cheek and whispered, "Sleep. Have a good sleep." Chu Qingyan felt that in her dream, someone seemed to be whispering something, making her slowly fall asleep step by step. Xiao bent his index finger and pressed it against her forehead. He leaned against the bedpost and watched her fall into a light sleep. Now, there were not many days left where he could steal half a day of leisure. Then he should enjoy it. In the princess's residence, the poison in Juanmei's body had been cured. She listened to Nanny Yi's account of what had happened this day and night with a gloomy face. In the end, she slammed the bowl in her hand on the pillar, and it instantly shattered into pieces. The maidservants in the room were so frightened that they trembled. Sun Qi, that dog slave, actually dared to secretly harm me. Tell the person in charge that I want him to live a life worse than death. Junmei gritted her teeth and said, "Yes." Nanny could only bite the bullet and agree. "By the way, where are the King of England and the rest?" Junmei calmed down and asked. His Majesty took him into the palace. Nanny lowered her head and replied, "Why did Imperial Brother take him into the palace? This won't do, I have to bring him back." Junmei flipped over and got off the bed. Chapter 341. As soon as Junzime got off the bed, Nanny stopped her. Princess, His Majesty said that you should stay in the manor and recuperate. Don't move around. I know my own body best. I'll be fine once the poison is cured, Junzime said as she put on her shoes. But His Majesty told me to watch you recuperate and completely remove the poison, Nanny insisted. Hearing this, Junzime glared at her fiercely. Mama, have you been bribed by my royal brother? Is that why you dare to interfere with me? Nanny hurriedly knelt down. Princess, you've misunderstood. I'm doing this for your own good. For my own good? Ha, Nanny, you have to see clearly who your master is. My brother stopped me from entering the palace because he didn't want me to see Xiao Su. What right do you have to talk to me like that? Junzime reprimanded her without holding back. Princess, please reconsider, Nanny advised earnestly. Anyway, I'm definitely going to enter the palace. Don't stop me. It wasn't easy for her to see Xiao Su, and it wasn't easy for her to detain him in the prince's estate. How could her imperial brother suddenly interfere? She originally wanted to wait until she truly became his woman before confessing everything to her imperial brother. Why couldn't her imperial brother give her some time to properly deal with these things? Moreover, her brother was clearly trying to stop her from being with Xiao Su. She couldn't accept this. It was as if the person who had always spoiled her suddenly stopped doting on her. She couldn't accept it. Junzime saw Nanny still kneeling on the ground. Anger built up in her heart. Without thinking, she kicked Nanny to the ground. Then, she lifted her skirt and led her maids to the palace. Princess, Nanny fell to the ground and shouted in pain. But Junzime had already gone far away. In the Junlan Imperial Palace, Junzisheng looked at the information in her hands. After confirming that there were no mistakes, she passed it to Lao Bai. The King of England wants this information. Send someone to deliver it to his palace later. Yes, Your Majesty. After Lao Bai received the large stack of information, a look of confusion appeared on his face. He stood there, unsure whether he should ask His Majesty. Jun Zixing picked up a pen from the side. Seeing that her subordinate was hesitant to speak, she couldn't help but say, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't hesitate. Lao Bai asked, Your Majesty, is it appropriate for you to pin all your hopes on the King of England? After all, the situation in Junlan has existed for decades. The vassals' connections have spread throughout the Junlan dynasty. They are intertwined and twisted. Those people have become even more aggressive, and the situation is once again grim. Your humble subject is not doubting the ability of the King of England, but I think, rather, you feel that the situation doesn't allow us to delay any longer, right? Jun Zixing continued. He wasn't a person who couldn't listen to advice. Lao Bai had been by his father's side for many years, and now he had come to support him. To him, this was a good helper. Therefore, he would still consider his words carefully. Your humble subject has the same intention. Lao Bai nodded in acknowledgement. Hearing this, Jun Zixing smiled slightly, but there was a hint of bitterness in his smile. Lao Bai, if I had the slightest idea, I wouldn't have asked for the help of outsiders. After all, it would be a disgrace to an emperor. But for so many years, because of the constraints of my uncles, I have rarely been able to truly participate in the decision-making of state affairs. As a result, even if I take over the throne now, I can't let go of my hands and feet. Xiao Su is used to using power and scheming. He has experienced a lot of intrigue. On the battlefield, he values speed in war and plays tricks in his hands. He is also good at guessing people's hearts. That's why I want to ask for his help. Moreover, he is the most trustworthy person, so he is the only person I can trust now. Jun Zixing smiled bitterly. Every royal family had unspeakable secrets. Who would be willing to reveal all the secrets of their royal family to outsiders? But if it wasn't for the fact that he had no other choice, he wouldn't do this. His gaze fell on the information in Lao Bai's hands. It not only contained the secrets of the royal family, but also many unspeakable things. But for the sake of Junlan's future, he could only throw caution to the wind. Lao Bai understood his emperor's worries. He was also helpless, but he was a little hesitant. Your Majesty, does the King of England need this much information? In fact, what he wanted to say was, does he need these royal secrets? Since he has asked for it, it must be useful. There's no need to say more. Send it over. Jun Zixing raised his hand tiredly. When Lao Bai saw this, he didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he excused himself and left. Lao Bai walked out of the hall and saw Jun Zixing walking towards him. He bowed to her and left. Jun Zixing frowned and looked in the direction Lao Bai left, then stepped into the imperial study. The princess has arrived. Jun Zixing raised his head and saw his sister's angry face. Why do you look so angry? Who made our lovely Princess Zime angry? Of course Jun Zixing knew why she had come, but he pretended not to know. Jun Zixing glared at him. Brother, you're asking the obvious. Oh, what do you mean? Jun Zixing asked in surprise. Jun Zixing was a little annoyed. Brother, you ordered someone to take away the important guest I invited with great difficulty last night. How can you still act like it's nothing important? Jun Zixing saw that she was so straightforward, so he stopped pretending. Are you sure you invited him here? You didn't kidnap him? Jun Zixing was stunned. Then she retorted, that's not important. What's important is that he's here. Speaking up to this point, Youngmei thought about her brother's usual uncompromising character, and immediately softened her tone. Brother, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have disregarded his wishes and brought him back to the princess's residence. But I really like Xiao. Please forgive me this time and return him to my sister. Jun Zixing was so angry that he laughed. If you weren't born a woman, I would suspect you of being a bully who snatches women. So what if I'm a bully? I'm willing to do anything for him. Jun Zixing swore solemnly. Jun Zixing heard her and felt a headache coming on. Zime, the relationship between a man and a woman is about mutual consent. It's not about coercion. Besides, I have something to discuss with Xiao. I can't hand him over to you for the time being. Brother, you're too much. Jun Zixing flew into a rage when she saw that her coquetry didn't work. You're the one who's too much. Jun Zixing's good temper was worn out by her. You're willing to throw away the princess's reputation for your own selfish reasons. If I hadn't helped you hide it, do you know how many people in Junlan would laugh at you? Brother, you weren't like this before. You wouldn't be so fierce to me. What's wrong with you today? Jun Zixing was stunned by his roar. When she came back to her senses, she was already in tears. Chapter 342. Seeing her reddened eyes, Jun Zixing knew that his tone was a bit off. However, he worked day and night on national affairs, and now he was burning with anxiety. His younger sister didn't obediently stay in the residence, and wanted to cause trouble. The pity in his heart was replaced by anger. He sighed. Someone take the princess away. She's not allowed to leave the princess residence for half a month. Jun Zixing couldn't believe what she heard. Imperial brother. How can you treat me like this? Zixing, you'll know in the future that Imperial brother is doing this for your own good. Jun Zixing turned around and waved for someone to take her away. Jun Zixing looked at the two guards walking over. She knew that no matter what she said, Imperial brother wouldn't change his mind. Thus, she glared fiercely at the two guards. There's no need for you to come. This consort will leave on her own. Jun Zixing angrily stomped out of the imperial study. It didn't matter if she wasn't allowed to see Xiao. She had her own ways. It was just that this wasn't the right time to clash with Imperial brother. Jun Zixing listened to the sound of footsteps fading away behind him and sighed inwardly. Now that Junlan had reached this critical juncture, his Imperial sister was still focused on love and didn't care about Junlan's safety at all. He was very disappointed. If Junlan was able to survive this crisis, then he must properly discipline this royal sister of his. However, what he didn't know was that his imperial sister was still thinking about how to snatch Xiao back to the princess residence. In the side hall, Xiao had already received the information sent by Jun Zixing. Lao Bai stood to the side and respectfully said, His Imperial Highness, His Majesty said that if there's any information you're still lacking, just mention it. He'll fulfill it. There's no need for now. Xiao Su took out one of the secret letters and took the time to reply. Yes. Seeing that Xiao Su was already seriously reviewing the letter, Lao Bai retreated. Turan and Hualing stood on both sides. Seeing the mountainous pile of information on the table, Hualing couldn't help but ask, Master, I'm afraid that Emperor Junlan's real power has been stripped away in the past 2 years. Can we clean up this mess? I have to do it even if I can't. Xiao Su looked calm, then pointed to the letters on the table and said, Take a look and find the weaknesses of each king. Yes. Turan and Hualing accepted the order and joined in the review. When the information was delivered, it was already close to night. They took a look and knew it was already nighttime. When Chu Qingyan woke up again, the sky was already dark. Except for a weak light in the room, it was pitch black. She got up. Xining heard the commotion outside, so she pushed the door open and walked in. Master, you're awake? She was holding a lunchbox in her hand. She placed the food on the table, and then went to get water for her to wash up. How long have I slept? She felt that she had slept for a very long time and was very comfortable. 4 hours. His Highness specifically instructed this servant not to disturb you. Xining replied with a smile. Chu Qingyan took the cloth in her hand and wiped her face. Then she asked, Where's His Highness? His Highness, Lord Hualing, and Lord Turan are working. He told everyone not to disturb them if there's nothing important. Xining replied with a smile. Chu Qingyan nodded. Previously, Big Ice Cube asked Jun Zisheng to send the information. With how anxious Jun Zisheng was at this time, he must have sent the information early. Then where's Jin Xian? She didn't seem to have seen him today. When Xining heard her master mention Jin Xian's name, a touch of displeasure appeared on her face. You mean him? He's holding a book like a treasure and practicing martial arts in front of it every day. Now he's probably practicing his moves in the courtyard. I feel like he's about to go crazy. It was rare to hear Xining complain about someone, so Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. You seem to have a big prejudice against him. As soon as Jin Xian was mentioned, she couldn't stop talking. That person isn't worthy of this servant's attention. Every time I kindly ask him to eat, he doesn't even say a word of thanks. He always looks like someone owes him millions. Just now, this servant kindly told him not to practice for too long in the cold weather, but he said that this servant was meddling in other people's business. Speaking of this, Xining's face was filled with grief and indignation. Master, listen to this. Isn't this called treating good intentions as ill intent? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. Why do I feel that Jin Xian's temper is still good? Why do you sound like he has 2 faces? Xining pouted. How would this servant know what he's thinking? If it weren't for the fact that we're both serving master, this servant wouldn't meddle in other people's business. In any case, this servant won't bother with him anymore. Listening to Xining's words, Chu Qingyan felt that it was a bit like enemies didn't meet. This girl said this. The next time her good intentions overflowed, she reckoned that she wouldn't learn her lesson again. She suddenly remembered what her father said before. He wanted to pair Xining and Jin Xian together. Now it seemed that there were some signs. Xining was lively and active, while Jin Xian was silent and steady. The two of them matched very well. But Jin Xian's origin had always been a worry in her heart. Although she never doubted him, even Xiao Lai-Chi couldn't find out his identity. In addition, he had lost his memory. She couldn't joke about Xining's life. So everything was up to fate. Before Jin Xian remembered his origin, she wholeheartedly trusted him. If there was a day when he remembered the past and wanted to leave, she wouldn't make things difficult for him. He's cold on the outside but warm on the inside. You should be more tolerant. Take out the magnanimity of the princess's #1 maidservant and most trusted aide. Chu Qingyan patted her shoulder and comforted her. Xining wasn't a person who liked to haggle. At most, she would just talk. Since her master had said so, she wouldn't take it to heart. After smiling and agreeing, she took care of her master's food. Master, the food in the palace is quite similar to our Sichuan's taste. You'll definitely like it. Hurry and try it. Xining helped her ladle a bowl of rice and put it in front of her. Chu Qingyan looked at the food on the table and nodded slightly. The new emperor of Junlan had put down his face to ask for Big Ice Cube's help. He wouldn't neglect food. It could be seen that Junlan's situation had reached a critical point. After eating 2 mouthfuls, she asked, "Has His Highness eaten dinner?" "He has. The palace maid sent the food in the evening." Xining stood at the side and occasionally helped her put food in the dishes. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she looked at the sky. More than 2 hours had passed. Big Ice Cube and the others would definitely be busy through the night. "Xining, after dinner, let's go make some food for His Highness, and the others as supper." She remembered that there was a small kitchen in this side hall. She could use it later. "Okay, we have a lot of things in our palace. We have all the ingredients," Xining said. She couldn't help but think that the people who made the arrangements were very thorough. Chu Qingyan nodded. At this time, the princess's residence was in a mess. Chapter 343. Her brother, who had doted on her for more than 10 years, refused to let her into the palace because of someone else. She had nowhere to vent her anger, so she could only torment the maids around her. When she returned home that night, a maid accidentally broke a teacup, so she ordered her to be beaten. The mournful cries outside had gradually died down. That maid had been raised by Imama. Imama couldn't bear to listen to her. She knew that the princess was punishing her as an example to warn her that her master was only one person, and her life was in her hands. At this time, the blue-robed officer came in. "Princess, I'm back. Have you found out which palace the King of England is staying in?" Junmei put down the teacup and asked anxiously. "I've found it. It's in a side hall near the Golden Phoenix Palace, but it's heavily guarded. I'm afraid it won't be easy to get in," the blue-robed officer said worriedly. "It's good that you know where it is." Junmei breathed a sigh of relief. She was afraid that her brother had hidden him, and she couldn't find him. Then she would really go crazy. Hearing the princess's words, it seemed that she wanted to secretly find the King of England. The blue-robed officer couldn't help but say, "Princess, His Majesty has ordered people to watch over the princess's residence and not let you take a step out. Why don't you wait until His Majesty calms down before entering the palace?" "No," Junmei rejected without hesitation. If she waited for half a month, wouldn't Xiao run away? She had finally caught him when he was down and out. If she waited any longer, her plan would be in vain. "I've never failed to get what I want. It was true in the past and it is true now," Junmei said with determination. The blue-robed officer knew his master's temperament well, and didn't dare to persuade her again. He just hoped that when His Majesty found out, it wouldn't implicate too many people. "I'll enter the palace tonight. Go and make the arrangements. Be discreet and don't let anyone find out," Junmei ordered. "Yes." The blue-robed officer accepted the order and left. Junmei walked in front of the mirror and reached out to touch her face. She couldn't understand why he wasn't moved by her even though she had dressed up so meticulously last night. A trace of doubt appeared in her eyes, but it was quickly drowned out by confidence. She had heard that he wasn't feeling well last night. Perhaps that was the reason why he wasn't willing to touch her. Then she would properly open her heart to him tonight and tell him about her admiration for him. She would explain that last night's matter wasn't her doing. If he knew that she loved him so much, even a rock would be moved. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but sit down and pick up the eyebrow pencil to draw. She wanted to show her best side to him tonight. Looking at the princess in front of the mirror, Nanny felt that the princess was too conceited and too persistent, as if she had been possessed by Xiao. But she was no longer qualified to advise the princess. The maid outside who was still breathing was the result of disobeying her. Nanny couldn't do anything about it. An hour later, they were informed that everything was ready. Junzi stood up and opened the door. She ordered everyone not to follow her before she left with the blue-robed officer. Beside the carriage stood 2 rows of the Princess Mansion's elites. Junzi revealed a satisfied smile before getting into the carriage. Tonight's matter could only succeed and not fail. In the side hall, it was brightly lit. Chu Qingyan carried a tray into the discussion room. At the table, Xiao, Hualing, and Turin were sitting in a corner. In front of them was a mountain of information. After reading it, they would put it to the side and write from time to time. Chu Qingyan placed the tray on another table and walked over to touch their teacups. She found that they were already cold, so she had Xining go and change them. Turan and Hualing saw her come over and bowed before continuing to write. Xiao Su put down the documents in his hands and looked up at her. It's late, you should sleep early. I've already slept for an entire afternoon, so I'm not sleepy now. I just brought some supper over. If you're hungry, eat some first. Chu Qingyan walked in front of him and said with a smile. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, Xiao Su called for his 2 subordinates to go eat. Hualing stretched and pulled Turan to fill his stomach. Chu Qingyan saw this, and also placed a stack of pastries in front of him. Then she placed her hands on the table and asked curiously, "Have you found any useful clues until now?" Xiao Su picked up a piece of ice cream and nodded when he heard this. Junzisheng found a complete set of information. There are many useful things in there. As soon as he finished speaking, Hualing quickly said, "Little Princess Consort, you don't know, but when we saw this information, we felt that the world is so big and there are so many strange things. There are so many funny things in there." As soon as Hualing finished speaking, he received a cold glare from his master. He knew that he had misspoken and immediately lowered his head to eat his supper. On the side, Turan scolded him. "You deserve it." Hualing knew that he was in the wrong, so he ignored him. When Chu Qingyan heard Hualing say this, she casually picked up a piece of information to look at. Her curiosity was already piqued by the word funny. There weren't many things in the imperial family that could be called funny. Because she had often entered Big Ice Cube's study before, he wouldn't care about anything she looked at, so Chu Qingyan just looked at it on her own. When Xiao Su on the side saw this, he felt a bit helpless. How could the imperial family's secrets be described as funny? It should be outrageous. He only hoped that this little fellow wouldn't be too shocked after reading it. The document in Chu Qingyan's hands happened to be the daily diet records of the previous Junlan emperor, who was also Jun Ziheng's grandfather. She casually flipped through the records, and her attention was drawn to one particular record. In the past, Jun Zisheng's grandfather was obsessed with longevity. When he heard that virgin boys' urine could slow down aging, he actually had his son, the previous emperor, pee for him to drink. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt like vomiting. She immediately closed the cover and saw the word secret written on it. She knew that it was probably sealed a long time ago, and was only taken out because Big Ice Cube needed it. She casually flipped through the other documents. There was also a secret document. It was about the previous emperor's harem's promiscuity. The imperial concubine couldn't bear the loneliness, and actually had an affair with a eunuch. She flipped through another secret investigation letter. It was about the truth of the harem's imperial concubine framing a favored imperial concubine, and causing her to have a miscarriage. Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. This Junlan imperial family was really chaotic. No, it should be that as long as there was a struggle for power, it would be this chaotic. But what she admired even more was that Jun Zisheng actually dared to show these things to Big Ice Cube. This was simply too embarrassing, alright? As if he saw through Chu Qingyan's thoughts, Xiao Su's eyes were tainted with the faint light of the candlelight and appeared gentle. Do you know why this prince wants to know everything about the Junlan imperial family's 3 generations of emperors, no matter how big or small, including their daily diet, daily hunting outside the palace, and daily pulse reading? Chu Qingyan looked into his eyes and couldn't help but ask, why? Chapter 344. One day, the little girl would come into contact with these things. Although she was only 10 years old now, there were many things that had to be done when she was a child. Although he didn't want her to know about the evilness of the palace and the cunning of people so early, sooner or later, she would have to learn how to protect herself and make the most appropriate response in times of crisis. Because when you become an enemy, the first thing you have to know is everything in his life. Perhaps it's just a small matter, but it can become a fatal flaw. Xiao Su's tone was serious. Chu Qingyan nodded. She understood. This is called knowing yourself and your enemy, and you will never be defeated. That's right. Xiao Su nodded. Big Ice Block, can you tell me about the current situation in Junlan? At this moment, she wasn't sleepy at all. She was very curious about the process of a great country being divided by a few vassals. Originally, he wanted to take this opportunity to tell her. Seeing that she had taken the initiative to mention it, Xiao nodded generously. When Chu Qingyan saw this, she immediately pulled over a chair and sat upright, listening attentively. Seeing her humble and eager to learn, Xiao curled his lips and began to explain. Thus, Chu Qingyan listened to Xiao description and roughly knew what kind of situation Junlan was in. Gentleman Sheng's grandfather had 10 sons. One of them was born to the empress, and the rest were born to the concubines. Only 6 princes lived to adulthood, including the one born to the empress. In the end, he was made the crown prince at the age of 16. However, not long after he was made the crown prince, he died in an accident when he fell off a horse while hunting. When Gentleman Sheng's grandfather found out, he was so heartbroken that he wanted to die. In the end, he passed away. However, at this time, Gentleman Sheng's grandfather's personal butler took out an imperial edict. On it was written that he would pass the throne to the 7th prince, who was Gentleman Sheng's father. As soon as this imperial edict was issued, the other 4 princes questioned the credibility of this imperial edict. However, at that time, the 4 of them didn't have military power and couldn't do anything. Gentleman Sheng's mother, the 7th imperial concubine, was a powerful general at that time. She had 100,000 soldiers and horses under her command. At that time, she was stationed outside the capital. However, it was also at that time that rumors spread that Gentleman Sheng's father had killed his brother and father to obtain the throne. Due to the pressure of public opinion, even though the 4 princes had joined forces to resist, Junzi Sheng's father couldn't do anything to them. This was because if he continued to hold these brothers accountable, it would become evidence that Junzi Sheng had killed his father and the crown prince. As such, he could only give them a piece of land each and banish them from the capital. Unless it was an important festival, they couldn't return to the capital. However, it was precisely because of Gentleman Sheng's imperial father's decision to let the tiger return to the mountain, leaving behind future troubles. At that time, the 4 princes were named King Jing, King Jin, King Zhe, and King Ping. These 4 vassal kings were sent to their fiefs, but they didn't give up on the idea of fighting for the throne. When Gentleman Sheng's father began to reorganize the court, they secretly recruited soldiers and bought horses to win over the court officials. Soon, their strength became incomparable. However, by the time Gentleman Sheng's father realized it, these vassal kings had already reached a point where they couldn't be shaken. This became a sore point for Gentleman Sheng's father. Thus, the tug-of-war between the capital and the 4 vassal kings began. But soon Gentleman Sheng's father's health deteriorated. For some reason, even the imperial doctors couldn't detect it. Then, Gentleman Sheng's father was assassinated and poisoned. The murderer couldn't be found, but people with discerning eyes knew that it was the vassal kings who did it. However, Gentleman Sheng's father didn't have any evidence and couldn't be arrested. In these years, Gentleman Sheng's father's health deteriorated. In the end, he passed away after passing the throne to Gentleman Sheng. Then, when Gentleman Sheng took over the throne, his brothers and sisters died one after another. Then something strange happened. Thus, a new round of public opinion came. Gentleman Sheng was narrow-minded. After the registration, he began to eliminate future troubles around him. Rumors spread everywhere, and there were also objections in the court. At this time, the vassal kings began to get restless. It was said that they wanted to enter the capital to attack. However, as early as when Gentleman Sheng took over the throne, his grandfather's military power had already been handed over after his death. Now the military power was divided into 4 parts, and it was simply not enough to resist the situation. Pull one hair, and the whole body would be affected. These vassal kings were watching to see who would make the first move, so in fact, this was also a psychological battle. Once someone made the first move, the situation would be broken. Soon, the capital would be besieged, and then Junlan's territory would be nibbled away step by step. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. This situation could be said to have reached a critical point. It was no wonder that Gentleman Sheng was so anxious at this time. He didn't even care about his face as the ruler of a country, and lowered his voice to seek help from the big ice cube. But in such a difficult situation, even if the big ice cube was an immortal, it would be difficult for him to solve it. Chapter 345. No one knew that on the long road of the imperial palace, there was a carriage that was currently moving. The night was very dark, but there were large red lanterns hanging all over the palace, covering the entire palace in a yellow glow. The glazed tiles shined under the moonlight, making the entire palace look like a city that never slept. Be careful, don't let the guards in the palace recognize you. Junzime warned. Princess, you can rest assured. Everything has already been taken care of. The blue-robed officer replied in a low voice, his voice filled with confidence. Money makes the world go round. Adding in the fact that his cousin was in charge of patrolling the palace, he had already sent people away, so he wasn't worried that someone would suddenly appear on this road. Hearing her subordinate's reply, Junzime relaxed. In the side hall, Chu Qingyan was currently seriously helping to organize the information. Xiao was seriously looking at the important points his subordinate had marked out. Then he categorized them, differentiating the importance of each point. Hualing and Turin quickly flipped through the information, not letting go of any useful information. Xining stood on the side, yawning from time to time and rubbing her eyes from time to time. But no matter what her master told her to do, she wasn't willing. This was because she had to prepare hot tea and snacks for them, afraid that they would be hungry or thirsty. When she was tired, she would add some charcoal to the stove to make the entire room a bit warmer. Chu Qingyan saw that she was insistent, so she didn't rush her anymore. This kind of sleepless struggle made her feel as if she had returned to the time before the final exams of university. In order not to fail, the 6 people in her dormitory had stayed up all night reading books, doing questions and discussing questions all night long. However, at that time, they were just cramming at the last minute, but that kind of drive was similar to now. It made her sigh when she recalled that time. Things had remained the same, but people had changed. Just as she was lost in thought, she felt a weight on her shoulder. She looked down and saw a slender hand that was fairer than a woman's. She looked along the blue sleeve and met a pair of eyes that were swirling with stars. Sometimes she felt that it was very strange. The big ice cube's eyes seemed to change color. When he was quiet, it was like a calm stream. When he was angry, it was like a pitch-black whirlpool. When he was unfathomable, it was as dark as the night sky. When he looked at you with a kind of pitiful eyes, it would be like now, as dazzling as the glazed starlight. What are you thinking about? Xiao frowned slightly. When the little fellow met his eyes, she suddenly became absent-minded. This feeling was somewhat strange, as if the person who was firmly grasped in the palm of his hand had suddenly lost track of her. Big Ice Cube, your eyes are like stars, she blurted out without thinking. Is that so? He couldn't help but relax his brows, and his mood suddenly became very good. His cold voice fell into her ears, successfully waking her up. Oh no, what the hell did she just say? Did he bring his brain with him? Her cheeks heated up, and she immediately buried her head in the information in her hands. She had really lost a lot of face. Pretty. Big Ice Cube actually asked him if his eyes were pretty? She had never seen him care so much about his appearance before. She wanted to shake her head against her will, but in the end, she honestly nodded, but her eyes didn't dare to look at him. Do you still have your stars? Suddenly hearing his question, Chu Qingyan paused and pulled out a string from her lapel. Then the grape-sized star fell onto her hand. At this time, the room was a bit dark, but the star in her hand emitted a white light, instantly lighting up the entire room. Very good. Xiao patted her head, and then continued to study the information on the table. Chu Qingyan was stunned on the spot. What did Big Ice Cube mean by this? He asked her if she had brought it, and she took it out. Then he said 2 words, very good. Moreover, the way he patted her just now, it seemed like he was patting a pet. Chu Qingyan felt a deep malice from this world. In the future, when she asked about this matter, she had already become the King of England's concubine. At that time, because she was too idle, she often liked to take out the past to pester him. And he also didn't refuse her intimacy and questions. He thought for a long time, then patted her head, just like how he patted her head today, and then said slowly, You think that this king's eyes are pretty, but this king has already given you the best stars a long time ago. So when you think of this king in the future, just look at the stars and you will see this king. After listening for a long time, Chu Qingyan belatedly realized that he actually knew how to say words of love. It was warm in the palace hall, and it was a world of difference from the cold outside. A door in the palace hall slowly opened from the inside, and a slender figure walked out. It was Cheng Yanluo, who couldn't sleep at night. She turned around and closed the door, then walked slowly in a random direction in annoyance. Today, as soon as she lay on the bed, she would recall everything that happened last night. Throwing herself at him, pestering him, her abnormal behavior after being poisoned, and what he said. Because of what she said, it caused him to be absent-minded in front of her. Xiao Yan, you haven't smiled at me like this for a long time. This sentence echoed in her ears, and her mind went blank. Then she quickly shook her head, trying to get rid of these words that had been echoing in her mind. Are you finally willing to forgive me? It rang again. She felt that she had no other choice, so she simply walked back in despair with her arms crossed. She wanted to come out to calm down, but it seemed that it didn't work. She lay back on the bed and tossed and turned. At least the quilt was warm. Just as she was about to turn around and go back, she felt a weight on her shoulders, and warmth fell on her body, instantly enveloping her. It was a familiar smell. It was a faint grass fragrance, which was different from the smell of many men. She guessed that it was him. Morongju, why are you following me? Because she didn't have to carry him, she had a little confidence. I didn't follow you. I just couldn't sleep, so I came out for a walk and happened to run into you. His voice sounded behind her. It seemed a little hoarse, but he managed to suppress it. Cheng Yanluo closed her eyes, then turned to look at him. Morongju didn't expect that she would suddenly turn around, and was a little stunned. Then he smiled modestly. Can't you sleep too? Morongju, what happened today? She hesitated for a moment, but didn't know how to start. Although she was poisoned, she did intend to violate him. And the person who saved her was also him. You don't have to explain. I know you had no choice at that time. It's all in the past. He stopped her from continuing. With Xiao Yan's character, she had never been willing to forgive herself. She must be very upset that something like this had happened. She had always had a strong self-esteem. Ethereal was afraid that she would be unhappy, so he chose to end the awkward situation between them in a casual way. However, he was wrong. Chapter 346. If it was as he thought, she wouldn't have been unable to sleep all night. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but smile sarcastically at his words. Morongju, you're more heartless than I am. You were like this in the past, and you're still like this now. Every time someone panicked and didn't know what to do because of you, you would always be able to easily withdraw without a single drop of water. Morongju, I was just delirious at that time, but I didn't lose my memory. I just don't want to admit that I've almost let go of my hatred for you. But you're too disappointing. I'm so disappointed. I'll return it to you. Cheng Yanluo pulled the cloak off her shoulder and threw it at him, then turned around and prepared to leave quickly. However, when she brushed past him, her hand was grabbed by a strong force, making it impossible for her to leave or break free. Morongju, what do you want? She lowered her voice and flew into a rage out of humiliation. She didn't want him to see her wishful thinking again. She had lost face once, and she didn't want to lose face again. At this moment, more than a dozen footsteps were heard coming in their direction. Unlike the heavy and orderly patrolling soldiers, Ethereal immediately stopped talking and let go of Cheng Yanluo's hand. He stuck close to the wall in front of him and paid attention. Sure enough, he saw more than a dozen figures appear outside the palace through the hollowed-out wall carvings. He immediately frowned. Xiao Yan, it seems that someone wants to harm Master. Go back to your room and protect yourself. Don't come out. Ethereal didn't look back as he instructed her, then quickly ran toward the main hall. While Ethereal was instructing her, Cheng Yanluo looked down at her wrist. When the warmth disappeared, she knew that she was going to be abandoned again. She suddenly understood the reason why she resented him for so many years. It was also the answer to the question she had been asking herself. It turned out that the problem between the two of them wasn't about who liked the other more, but which one of them was more important in his heart, her or him. However, The answer was that in his heart, his responsibility was more important than hers. It was the same last time, and it was the same this time. If he had put down his responsibilities and come back to look for her in these 6 years, he wouldn't have ended up like this today. Unfortunately, she curled her lips, but her tone was more self-deprecating. What could she do if she fell in love with such a man? Forget it, so be it. She tightened her grip on the cloak that he had draped over her body again, and immediately headed towards the main hall. At this moment, she was already on the same boat as the little girl and the others. She couldn't just sit and wait for death. Actually, what she didn't want to admit was that the person she cared about was also among them. Ethereal quickly flashed into the main hall, and saw the people who were seriously reviewing the information. "Master, there are people coming. There are about 15 or 16 of them. I'm afraid they're almost at the door." Ethereal didn't stop and spoke quickly. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Xiao frowned slightly. Gentleman Sheng had promised him that there would be no guards inside the palace, but there would be a large number of guards outside to protect the entire palace. However, after listening to Ethereal's words, there were no sounds of fighting. This proved that there were no guards outside. That was why those people could enter the palace so easily. Turin and Hualing had already stood up and pulled out their weapons. To be able to have such authority in the palace, could it be? Chu Qingyan already had a guess. Xiao Su's expression immediately darkened. It seemed that he had also guessed it. As if to confirm their guesses, a sharp voice came from outside. "Your Highness, this consort has come to bring you back to the palace." Just as the proud and confident voice fell, the person arrived. Junzime appeared at the entrance of the palace in a beautiful red dress. She immediately saw Xiao Su standing in the crowd. She pursed her lips into a smile and leisurely walked over. "Princess, I'm afraid it's not appropriate for you to come so late at night. Please return." Xiao Su's tone was indifferent. To be able to waste so much time talking to her at such a busy time was already very kind of big ice cube. Chu Qingyan looked at Junzime, who had come with ill intentions and was a bit angry. She didn't sleep in the middle of the night and came to disturb people. Only this brainless princess would do something like this. "Your Highness, can you have these miscellaneous people withdraw? This consort has something to say to you." Junzime didn't think that Xiao Su would treat her so coldly. She swept her eyes over the crowd and saw that there were so many people here. Her expression was a bit ugly as she spoke in disdain. "There aren't any miscellaneous people here. Princess, if you have something to say, just say it. This prince is very busy." Xiao Su continued to flip through the information and didn't say anything else. He looked like he didn't want to pay attention to her. Chu Qingyan felt that if it weren't for the agreement he made with Jun Zixing and giving Jun Zixing face, Big Ice Cube probably would have directly told her to scram. Junzime had been pampered since she was young. When had she ever been treated like this? She gritted her teeth and glared hatefully at Xiao Su. However, she knew that his personality had always been like this. She should get used to it, so she restrained the anger that was about to erupt and did her best to appear gentle. "Your Highness, this time, Junzime has a few things to say to Your Highness. The first thing is to apologize." This consort didn't know that the incense was poisoned. At that time, this consort only took some medicine from the estate's physician that could calm the nerves and induce sleep. Unexpectedly, that physician had ulterior motives and switched the medicine. "This matter has nothing to do with Junzime, but I still caused Your Highness to be frightened. It's Junzime's fault." Junzime looked like she was filled with self-blame, and looked like she was about to cry. Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. This Junzime's ability to turn right and wrong upside down was as strong as her brain damage value. That night, she dressed like that and tried to curry favor for no reason. Did she really think that they were easy to fool? Ethereal said that if it wasn't for the fact that the snake's kiss poison in Big Ice Cube's body was extremely domineering and couldn't coexist with other poisons, Big Ice Cube would have already been infected by the Dove of Joy. This Junzime really was thick-skinned. The second thing is that Junzime fell asleep last night. When I woke up this morning, I found out that Your Highness had been taken away by my imperial brother. Junzime knew that Your Highness was also threatened by my imperial brother, and had no choice but to do so. Thus, Junzi took the risk of being punished by my imperial brother to enter the palace and bring your highness back. As soon as Junzi finished speaking, Chu Qingyan burst into laughter. Junzi felt like her dignity had been greatly challenged, and she glared daggers at Chu Qingyan. Miss Chu, you seem to have a problem with this consort's words? Could it be that this consort has said something wrong? Junzi threatened Chu Qingyan. She no longer had the coquettish attitude she had when speaking to Xiao Su earlier. This person really was like the weather in July, changing at will. No, it should be that she had two faces. Chu Qingyan originally didn't want to bother with this brain-damaged princess, but she couldn't swallow the fact that someone else was trying to invade her territory. She had the right to protect the integrity of her territory. It was necessary to defend her territory. Chapter 347. When Junzi saw Chu Qingyan's half-smile, she immediately felt that this person was truly an eyesore. She wanted nothing more than to get rid of her. Chu Qingyan ignored her piercing glare and said with a mocking smile, "Princess, we can let bygones be bygones for the first matter, but I'm afraid we can't agree to the second matter." You, Junzi wanted to retort. What right do you have to make decisions for Xiao Su? But she was afraid that Xiao Su would say that she was exercising her duties as a princess, so she could only swallow her words. This consort wants to hear your highness's thoughts. She changed the topic to Xiao Su. Xiao Su didn't even raise his head when he heard this. Qingyan's words are this prince's thoughts. You. Junzi was stunned, then said, "Your highness, are you really going to be so heartless to Zime?" Xiao Su's fingers paused, then he calmly replied, "If there's no love, how can there be heartless? Princess, you're thinking too much." "Xiao Su, how can you say that? Zime has admired you for a long time." Junzi bit her lip as tears streamed down her face. Right now, she couldn't care less about her princess bearing. She was just a young girl in love who couldn't obtain the love of her beloved. Many thanks. Xiao Su didn't feel any connection with her because she was a princess or because she was a woman. In his eyes, insignificant people weren't worth wasting his energy on. Just a single many thanks and nothing else? Junzi stared blankly at the person who was still sitting in front of her. She had fallen in love at first sight, been attached to after parting, and had missed him for 2 years. She was full of affection, but in the end, all she got was a single many thanks from him. It was still a polite greeting without any emotion. She felt like she was going crazy. You have the right to admire someone, but this prince has the right to not accept. Xiao Su frowned slightly. This person was too noisy. He was about to order someone to chase her out. Junzi felt deeply hurt when she heard this. She held on to an infatuated heart, but it was trampled on so wantonly. She couldn't swallow this anger. That was how love turned to hate. "Xiao Su, you've gone too far." Junzi was furious. Upon hearing this, Chu Qingyan had a bad feeling. As expected, Junzi waved her hand. "Men, take him away." As soon as he finished speaking, more than a dozen guards outside immediately appeared and pointed their weapons at them. Turin, Huiling, and the others also brandished their swords, and the scene suddenly reached a white-hot stage. "Junmei, aren't you afraid of your imperial brother finding out that you're using force in the imperial palace?" Chu Qingyan stepped forward and questioned. She didn't expect Junmei to be this crazy. Even if my imperial brother found out, he would only scold this consort. In his eyes, this consort is the younger sister he watched grow up, so of course this consort is more important than you outsiders. How could he side with outsiders? Junzi felt like Chu Qingyan was simply joking, so she looked at her with disdain. Chu Qingyan felt like this person really didn't bring her brain with her when she went out. This wasn't a matter of deep sibling love, but rather as a princess, she actually dared to openly lead troops into the imperial palace. This was already offending the authorities' reverse scale. No matter how much Junzi cherished her, she would still bear a grudge because of her actions. "Princess, it's late. You should go back." Chu Qingyan felt like this princess was brainless, but she was still a girl who had lost herself in love. She sighed. If she drew her sword, the one who would be injured in the end would only be herself. However, Junmei felt that Chu Qingyan was demonstrating her strength at this time, So she ordered, "Capture this stinky girl who doesn't know what's good for her." As soon as her voice fell, the soldiers didn't have time to make a move when they heard the sound of a heavy slap on the table. Junmei looked over and saw Xiao slamming the brush in his hand on the table. He looked at her coldly. "People need face and trees need bark. Princess, is this prince not clear enough? If you dare to touch a single hair of this prince's people, this prince doesn't mind letting you taste the taste of Junlin's decline." It wasn't that easy to take back the military power of the vassal kings, but it was as easy as flipping one's hand to start a war between the vassal kings and the capital city. Junmei was startled. She wasn't startled by his words, but by his tone. Although he was cold, he had never been so ruthless to her. She didn't know that he had always been indifferent to people who didn't matter, unless someone touched his reverse scale. "Xiao, it's fine if you don't like me, because you don't understand me. As long as you give me time, I will definitely." Junmei was so frightened that she didn't know what to do. She didn't want him to hate her, so she changed from her arrogant and rude attitude to a submissive one. However, this made Xiao even more impatient. "This prince doesn't want to see you again. Scram." Although the princess's ability to change her expression was amazing, Chu Qingyan didn't feel that there was anything to pity. Normal people would be dissatisfied with people who rashly intruded into other people's lives and tried to cause trouble. She didn't think that the ice cube was heartless. With his temperament, he had already given Junmei Sheng a lot of face by waiting until now. In the ice cube's eyes, Junmei was just a walking piece of wood. He didn't care at all. If it weren't for Junmei Sheng's face, Junmei would have been thrown out by now. "Xiao, fine. You're ruthless enough. Don't think that this prince will let you off just because of this. Men, arrest all of these people." Junmei's eyes were malevolent. She didn't look as beautiful as she did when they first met. She looked like a living witch. Chu Qingyan thought to herself, "This is her true face." Just as the soldiers were about to step forward, a cold shout rang out. "Junmei, what are you doing?" Junmei's body trembled. Her imperial brother had arrived. She turned to look at the people who were entering the palace in a single file. She found her imperial brother's direction and ran over. The guilty party complained first. "Imperial brother, these people actually dared to humiliate me. You have to help me vent my anger." "Oh no, other than Xiao, throw everyone else into prison." Junmei sobbed as she complained to her imperial brother. "Junmei, have you caused enough trouble?" Junmei Sheng stood in the middle of the palace. Seeing his imperial sister sobbing so hard that she couldn't speak made him feel vexed. If he hadn't received a report from Xiao's subordinates, he didn't know what kind of trouble his imperial sister would have caused in the palace. "Imperial brother, why did you?" Junmei was so frightened that she forgot to cry. "If this prince hadn't come, who knows what kind of trouble you would have caused?" Junmei Sheng said, exasperated. "Imperial brother, please listen to your imperial sister's explanation." Before Junmei could finish, Junmei Sheng interrupted her. "Men, take the princess away. Detain the others," Junmei Sheng ordered coldly. A large group of imperial guards immediately rushed forward. Thus, Junzimei was unwillingly dragged away. Chapter 348. When the palace was quiet again, Junzi Sheng turned to Xiao and said, "King of England, I'm sorry to have startled you. I didn't know that the guards of Junlan Palace were so weak." Xiao looked at him coldly. Junzi Sheng knew that he was in the wrong. He had promised him that he wouldn't let his sister disturb him, but he went back on his word tonight. "I'll strengthen the security and won't let anyone barge in," Junzi Sheng promised. "There won't be a next time." Xiao sat down again, clearly unwilling to pay any more attention to him. Junzi Sheng saw that he was still sorting out the documents in the middle of the night, and his anger dissipated. He could only blame his sister for asking for humiliation. "Then, King of England, rest early." With that, Junzi Sheng left with his men. Chu Qingyan looked at Junzi Sheng's departing figure, seemingly helpless. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Junzi Sheng was really unlucky to be in such a mess and have such an unreliable sister. He was really drunk. "Why are you sighing?" A cold voice suddenly sounded. Chu Qingyan replied, I just feel a little pity for Zhenzisheng. I feel that it's been hard for him to be the emperor. Xiao smiled mockingly. This is everyone's fate. Since it's already decided, there's no right to resist. Chu Qingyan was stunned. The big ice cube had always been cold and wouldn't judge others, but when she heard his words, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but turn to look at him, only to see that he had lowered his head and was seriously reading the documents. A wave of pity welled up in her heart. It was because the big ice cube felt the same way that he said those words. However, his methods were different from Zhenzisheng's. In the same situation, he had done far more than Zhenzisheng, and it was even more bitter. He didn't even receive a trace of gratitude. On the contrary, Zhenzisheng received more. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. That's right. You have to finish the path you chose, even if you have to kneel down, right? She wanted to lighten the mood, but the unromantic person threw her a sentence. There are 10 more records here. Take them all. What the hell? She had already decided to go to bed. That big ice cube, I'm sleepy. She fought for some time to rest. Didn't you say that you have to finish the path you chose even if you have to kneel down? Didn't you say you wanted to stay and help? Xiao looked at her amused. Well, this was simply shooting himself in the foot. Who asked him to be so talkative? Chu Qingyan finally realized what it meant by a loose tongue. Thus, she obediently picked up the notebook and read it without missing a single word. In the silent night, even the hall was quiet, except for the sound of pages being flipped from time to time. Xiao looked up and saw the little girl rubbing her eyes and taking notes seriously. A touch of gentleness flashed through his eyes. He couldn't bear for her to suffer, but some things had to be experienced, so he had to force himself to watch her grow. Chu Qingyan did not notice how gentle his gaze was on her, as she was completely focused on the book. Inside the hall, Turin and Hualing were reorganizing the information. Ethereal saw that he couldn't help much, so he turned around to leave. But when he turned around, he saw his junior sister standing to the side. He was a bit surprised and wanted to go up to her, but she turned around and left the hall. Xiaoyan, didn't I tell you to go back to your room? Why did you come out? Ethereal walked past her and stopped in front of her. Cheng Yanluo stopped in her tracks. She didn't want to pay attention to him, but in the end, she still raised her head and indifferently replied, I was worried about Qingyan, so I followed her to take a look. Ethereal was stunned by the distant look in her eyes, and forgot what he wanted to say. His head was a bit dizzy right now, so he stood there in a daze. She didn't hear any response from him, so Cheng Yanluo ignored him. She turned around and planned to walk past him, but she suddenly saw his body sway and she subconsciously supported him. What's wrong with you? Before she could finish speaking, she could feel a burning sensation under her fingers through his clothes. She was slightly startled. Are you having a fever? After Ethereal steadied himself, his eyes regained some clarity. He smiled. It's nothing. I might have caught a cold. You should go back and rest. It's getting late. With that, he planned to turn around and return to his room, but suddenly, another wave of dizziness hit him, forcing him to support himself against the wall. Cheng Yanluo looked at him and frowned hesitantly. He had always been in good health, so the sudden fever probably had something to do with last night. She had almost stripped him naked, but he had given her his outerwear to take care of her. Perhaps he had caught a cold then, and with the torment of the past 2 nights, even if his body was made of iron, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Ethereal originally wanted to wait for the dizziness to subside before returning to his room, but he realized that the situation was far worse than he had imagined. At this moment, he suddenly felt a tug on his arm, and someone wrapped their arms around his waist. He lowered his head and looked at the slender hand supporting him. He turned to look at the person beside him in disbelief. Xiaoyan, I'll help you back to your room. You might get worse after a while. Cheng Yanluo lowered her eyes. Her tone was calm, devoid of any emotion. However, this was already a very good improvement for Ethereal. He wanted to speak again, but she cut him off. Don't talk nonsense. I'm just trying to be a doctor. I can't leave you in the lurch. She seemed to be trying to convince herself. After that, she stopped talking and helped him back to his room. Chapter 349. In the imperial study, a battle of words was taking place. No, it was a one-man show. Junzi looked at her brother in front of her, unable to understand. She wanted to smash everything in the hall. Brother, why won't you let me see Xiao Su? Do you know how much I care about him? Junmei asked angrily. Junmei Sheng held his forehead with one hand. He hadn't slept well for 2 nights in a row. The culprit was right in front of him. Zimei, you're the princess of a country. You should act like one. What's wrong with you? Besides, you're a girl and unmarried. Don't you feel ashamed that you keep mentioning a stranger's name? Junmei Sheng's good temper was exhausted. He spoke coldly. Junmei relied on her brother's love for her, and didn't notice the disappointment in his words. She sat on the chair and said confidently, Brother, ever since I met him 2 years ago, I've treated him as someone I'll marry for the rest of my life. Sooner or later, I'll take him down, so this isn't important anymore. Zimi. Junmei Sheng put down his hand and called out to her seriously. Junmei, who was about to ramble on, was frightened by his serious look. She bit her lip and didn't say anything else. You're the princess of Junlan. Your status is incomparably noble. If you want anything, just say the word and someone will give it to you. This is understandable. But who is Xiao Su? He's the king of England of Sichuan. If you make things difficult for the lord of a country, this isn't a simple game. I can turn a blind eye to whatever you do in Junlan, but I won't allow it. Junmei Sheng lectured her with a stern face for the first time. But Junmei was obviously unconvinced. Brother, you told me not to make things difficult for him. Then what are you doing now? Aren't you detaining him too? Don't think that you can deceive me just because you've done it secretly. She felt that she and her brother were the same. There was nothing to say. Hearing Junzi Mei's words, Junzi Sheng laughed in anger. He also felt that his sister was hopeless. Sister, don't you know what state our country is in now? It can be said that we are besieged on all sides, with jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards eyeing us covetously. And we have racked our brains to keep Xiao Su here, because we want to rely on his ability to get through this difficult time. But you have ruined it again and again. Do you really care about Junlan's safety? Junmei couldn't say a word. She felt that her brother was really angry. This was different from when she made him unhappy in the past. Junmei stammered. She was clearly frightened. A storm is brewing, yet you only care about your personal affairs. If this matter were to spread out, those people with bad intentions would use this matter to make an issue out of it. At that time, there would be many people who would mock our royal family. Now that things have come to this, Zimei, your royal brother is too disappointed in you. Jun Zixing closed his eyes, feeling somewhat pained. Brother, don't be angry. I was wrong. Junmei finally panicked. She could enjoy such treatment at this time, and no one dared to bully her, because of her brother's love for her. Now that her brother was disappointed in her, how could she survive in Junlan in the future? Men, lock the princess in the princess's residence. Without my order, she is not allowed to leave the residence. Brother, flog all the people in the princess's residence and send them to the border. The princess's current situation is related to these servants. Brother, I was wrong. Send the imperial guards to guard the princess's residence. No one is allowed to enter or leave at will. Brother. After Junmei gave the order, Junmei was taken away with a wave of his hand. Being locked in the princess's residence and being grounded were two completely different things. Junmei looked at the palace with some despair. Did her brother really not want her anymore? Lao Bai reported that the princess had been sent back to the princess's residence, and even the people she had planted in the palace had been removed one by one. Only then did Junzi Sheng rub her brows. Zimei is used to being unreasonable. It's also my fault for being busy with state affairs and neglecting to discipline her. Choose 2 experienced nannies to teach her the rules of conduct and let her cultivate her character. Don't think about such nonsense. Lao Bai was very surprised by what His Majesty had done to the princess today. Usually, when the princess made mistakes, His Majesty would only punish her lightly. He had never been so strict as today. It was probably because the princess had reached into the harem. The spies she had planted were usually of high status in the palace. They had crossed His Majesty's bottom line, which was why he was so angry this time. Moreover, the princess had deluded herself into thinking of kidnapping the savior of Junlan. She was simply courting death. Fortunately, His Majesty pitied her as the only blood relative left in this world. Otherwise, the princess would have suffered more than just a little punishment. Your Majesty, you must also take care of your health. Junlan can't do without you. Lao Bai couldn't help but worry when she saw the dark circles under His Majesty's eyes. Junmei Sheng smiled bitterly and shook his head. He didn't reply. At this critical moment of life and death, and with the matter of his imperial sister, he already felt physically and mentally exhausted. At this time, the sky was gradually brightening. Let's go to morning court. Junmei Sheng stood up, smoothed the creases on his clothes, and strode out. Lao Bai followed behind. His Majesty was only in his early 20s, but there was already white hair in his hair. Her eyes felt sour. Everyone thought that the position was glorious and respected by tens of thousands of people. Little did they know that in order to sit firmly in that position, in addition to having a strong hand, one also had to have a strong ability to resist pressure. It was lonely at the top. In the side hall, Xiao Su closed the last bit of information and turned his head to look out the window. The sky was already bright. Quelling and Turin had already gone to do something. On the side, the little fellow hugged more than a dozen account books and was sleeping soundly. Xiao Su couldn't help but smile when he saw this. He reached out and took the book away from her, but she didn't wake up. It could be seen that she was really tired after staying up all night. He stood up and reached through her arms and calves. He picked her up by the waist and turned to his room. Covering her body with the quilt, Xiao Su stroked her head. Then he didn't stay any longer. He turned around and returned to the side hall. Master. Quelling and Turin immediately came back after dealing with the matter of the fierce cavalry. Go and tell Junmei Sheng that this king has a way to deal with the vassal king. Xiao Su said lightly. His voice was clear and mellow, without any trace of staying up all night. Yes. Quelling immediately went down. Last night, he had already memorized all the information about Junlan in his mind. After spending the night, he also found the flaws of these people. He had a bold plan in his heart. Junmei Sheng had just finished court when he heard the news. He couldn't believe it. In just one night, he had a way. If he didn't hear wrong, then this person was terrifyingly powerful. But he didn't dare to delay for a moment. He immediately took Lao Bai to the side hall. Chapter 350. When Junzi Sheng arrived at the side hall, Xiao Su and the others were already sitting and waiting for him. As soon as he saw Xiao Su, Jun Zixing ignored everyone's salutations and immediately greeted him. King of England, I heard that you found a way? Xiao Su wasn't as excited as Jun Zixing. He calmly reached out to Junzi Sheng and said, Your Majesty, please sit down. This king still has some things to confirm with Your Majesty. Seeing Xiao Su's calm expression, Junzi Sheng knew that he had lost his composure. He sat down and tried to restrain the excitement in his heart. He returned to his usual steady and calm appearance and asked politely, King of England, if there's something you don't understand, you can ask me at any time. I'll tell you everything I know. Xiao Su nodded. Your Majesty, I have a few things to ask of you. Go ahead. Affected by Xiao Su's expression, Junzi Sheng said calmly. The first thing is the results of the investigation into the assassination of your imperial father. Xiao Su knew that this wasn't in the information, but he still had to study it with Junzi Sheng. Junzi Sheng was stunned at first because he didn't expect him to ask this. However, he immediately recalled the investigation at that time and said slowly, After imperial father was poisoned, the matter was handed over to the Supreme Court. In the end, it was found that it was done by concubine Lung and concubine Liang's family. They were quickly arrested and brought to justice. They confessed to this matter. Junzi Sheng felt that this matter was already over. He didn't know why Xiao Su would mention it again. Xiao Su heard this and said, Your Majesty, do you also think that this matter was really done by concubine Lung? King of England, what do you mean? Junzi Sheng didn't understand. This king found out that concubine Liang was timid by nature. She was framed and entered the cold palace. Her family only made their fortune from tea. After concubine Liang entered the palace, her family didn't have any brothers, nor did they have any connections. I don't know how her family got the secret poison of the imperial family. Also, where did they find such an elite assassin? Where did the silver come from? Xiao Su asked 3 questions in a row, leaving Gentleman Sheng speechless. When his father was poisoned, he was out training. By the time he returned, the matter had already been dealt with, so he didn't think too much about it. Now that Xiao Su asked this question, he also had many questions. As the ruler of a country, he had to take one step at a time. As long as someone gave him a hint, he would be able to see more deeply than others. For example, right now, King of England, what do you think? Gentleman Sheng looked at the person in front of him and asked sincerely. Xiao Su curled his lips when he heard this, but there was no trace of a smile on his face. I heard that the eldest son of the Supreme Court Chancellor married King Ping's 3rd concubine's daughter. 5th uncle? Impossible. Junzi Sheng blurted out subconsciously. 5th imperial uncle is a refined and gentle person. How could he do such a thing? In response to Gentleman Sheng's disbelief, Xiao Su smiled indifferently. I'm just reminding you. But if he's really refined and gentle, then what about the 120,000 soldiers in his hands? Don't tell me it's for playing house? Gentleman Sheng fell silent. Xiao Su was right. Although 5th imperial uncle was really good to him when he was young, in the current situation he couldn't see through 5th imperial uncle. However, he still had some doubts. The vassal king was waiting for an opportunity to act. It was 5th imperial uncle who sent a secret letter to me first. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about the vassal king's movements so quickly. He's just a thief pretending to be a thief. Seeing that Gentleman Sheng was still doubtful, Xiao Su didn't force him. He said casually, "If you don't believe me, you can invite the Supreme Court Chancellor's family back to interrogate them. However, it has to be done in secret. You can also reopen the case from that year and re-examine it." In the imperial family, there was no blood to speak of. Conspiracies and deceit filled their lives. Xiao Su closed his eyes, as if recalling his hopeless 20 years in the past. Gentleman Sheng reluctantly nodded. "Okay, when I go back, I'll send someone to investigate. I still don't believe that 5th imperial uncle would do such a thing." Xiao Su ignored this question. Second question, Your Majesty. Do you think that the strange deaths of your brothers and sisters in the past 6 months are strange? Xiao Su asked faintly. Gentleman Sheng was very surprised. Xiao Su didn't think that his brothers and sisters were killed, because he couldn't tolerate them like other people. After all, this was how rumors spread outside. King of England, you don't doubt me? Xiao Su looked at Gentleman Zixing as if he was an idiot. I don't think that the person who built the mansions of my brothers and sisters would kill them. After all, a lot of manpower and material resources were spent on those mansions. If people died just like that, the losses would outweigh the gains. Because Junlon valued etiquette, those mansions were built according to the specifications of the princes and princesses. If the princes and princesses weren't there, they couldn't be awarded to the ministers. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in line with etiquette. Gentleman Sheng was a little moved. Even an outsider like you believes me. But my people and relatives don't believe me. They all say that I'm cruel and merciless, killing my brothers and sisters. How could the people know so much? It's just that someone is adding fuel to the fire and spreading rumors. Xiao Su said leisurely. It was obvious that it couldn't be Gentleman Sheng. An emperor who hadn't established himself yet. How big of a hole was there in his brain to kill his brothers and sisters? Moreover, he didn't even spare the princesses. Then King of England, do you know who's behind this? Gentleman Sheng was a little agitated again. Xiao Su looked at him coldly. The rumors are still going on. Get someone to capture a few people who are making a big fuss and interrogate them. Then you'll know. Xiao Su felt that this person was extremely lucky to be able to be the emperor, and had been for a few months at that. At this time, he was still intact. Gentleman Sheng seemed to have been enlightened, and immediately nodded. Yes, you're right. I'll give the order later. He had been so busy recently that he didn't have time to care about these things. Unfortunately, The rumors didn't get a good channel. Coupled with the deliberate guidance of someone with ulterior motives, it would soon ferment even more. At this time, Gentleman Xiang didn't quite understand. King of England, you said that the person behind this killed my brothers and sisters. The reason is obvious. It's to make people misunderstand that I'm afraid that my brothers and sisters will fight for the throne and get rid of them quickly. The princesses are all women and don't have the qualifications to fight for the throne. Why would the person behind this be so ruthless? Could it be that they want to create an image of me as selfish and self-centered? Xiao snorted coldly. Of course the princesses won't fight for the throne. It's just that they're more valuable. Gentleman Xiang was very confused, but he didn't dare interrupt Xiao. He listened to him continue. Generally, when a new emperor ascends the throne and his foundation is unstable and the country is in chaos, he will use the form of political marriages with other countries. This is used to check the power of some people. Gentleman Xiang understood immediately. So the person behind this wants to cut off my escape route and doesn't give me any chance to make a comeback. Xiao didn't answer. He rubbed his forehead. Although this Gentleman Xiang wasn't stupid, he was still very stupid without someone to enlighten him. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted his next plan to be smoother, he wouldn't have been willing to talk so much with Gentleman Xiang. Chapter 351. Just talking about these two issues made Junzi Sheng explode with anger. But thanks to Xiao's analysis, he was able to sort out the problems that had been troubling him for the past few days. At the very least, he was no longer like a headless ball of string, unable to grasp the slightest clue. While drinking tea, Junzi Sheng could no longer hold back his temper. He repeatedly ordered Lao Bai to investigate the poisoning of the late emperor, the mysterious deaths of his royal siblings, and the mastermind behind the spreading of the rumors. Xiao was not in a hurry. After he finished giving his orders, he slowly spoke again. There is one more thing. It's about the concubines in the imperial harem. Junzi Sheng immediately sat upright. King of England, there is no need to worry about Jun. There is no harm in speaking. Xiao did not intend to be courteous with him. He leisurely leaned back in his chair and said with a languid expression, I heard that Consort Xiao Shufei was not born as a harem, and did not go through the selection process. Is this true? Consort Xiao Shufei was Jing Wang's Mufei, and the child of Junzi Sheng's grandfather. Zhen is not very clear on this matter. Junzi Sheng shook his head, but he turned to Lao Bai and said, You should be clear on this matter. Come and talk to the King of England. Lao Bai had been by Junzi Sheng's side this entire time. Just now, Xiao's words had dispelled the heavy dark clouds that had shrouded the capital. He had already felt admiration for Xiao. When the matter of Consort Xiao Shufei was mentioned, he had wanted to explain. Now that His Highness asked, he did not hide anything and immediately replied. Consort Xiao Shufei was indeed not selected through the proper selection process. Because in Junlan, if a woman is of marriageable age or above and is unmarried, she can send a legitimate daughter to the palace to participate in the selection process. Back then, although Consort Xiao Shufei was of marriageable age, she had a childhood playmate who was engaged at a very early age. Thus, she did not participate in the selection process. At this point, Lao Bai couldn't help but pause, as though he was thinking about how to continue. Junzi Sheng was listening attentively. Seeing him suddenly stop, he was a little puzzled. Lao Bai, hurry up and tell me. Don't dilly-dally. Why did Xiao Shufei appear in the inner palace after missing the selection? He didn't think that Xiao would casually ask such a question. He would only mention it if it was useful, so he was a little dissatisfied with Lao Bai's hesitation. Xiao chuckled softly. It must have been a coincidence that Emperor Mingxian saw Consort Xiao Shu and took her into his harem. Emperor Mingxian was the title of Grandpa Sheng. Lao Bai did not expect Xiao to know. He smiled awkwardly and said to His Majesty, The King of England is not wrong. That year, after the selection of talented women, it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. His Majesty Mingxian brought his ministers to tour the lake and happened to see Xiao Shufei, who was out sightseeing. Admiring her beauty and talent, he ordered people to inquire about her. Because he was the ruler of a country, Xiao Shufei's parents did not dare to disobey, and sent their daughter to the palace. What? Imperial grandfather didn't know that Xiao Shufei was engaged? Grandpa Sheng was very surprised. Lao Bai smiled bitterly. Your Majesty, at that time, Your Majesty Ming Xian had taken a fancy to her. How could this subject dare to disobey? I only heard that Xiao Shufei cried for several days when she heard that the marriage was bestowed, and that so-called fiancé's family left the capital. Perhaps he was afraid of getting into trouble. If the ruler wanted a subject to die, the subject had to die. This was the principle. How could a subject dare to oppose the emperor? Grandpa Sheng knew that his imperial grandfather was dissolute by nature, but he didn't know that there was a matter of snatching someone's fiancé. But he didn't understand. King of England. What does this have to do with our grand plan? Xiao Su listened to the conversation between the ruler and his minister. At this moment his expression was somewhat mocking. Your Majesty, don't be anxious. This matter is very important, so important that it can help you get rid of someone. Grandpa Sheng was delighted. Then King of England, quickly tell me. Xiao Su turned to look at Lao Bai. He remembered that this person had once served the previous emperor. I wonder if Lord Lao has checked the records of Emperor Mingxuan's bedside when he was on the throne? No, Lao Bai answered truthfully. Then do you know the specific date of Prince Jing's birth? Xiao Su asked again. I do. Lao Bai answered. Although he was a servant by the previous emperor's side at that time, as a confidant of his master, he had to understand all the situations of his master's competitors. So he not only knew about Prince Jing, but also the specific birth dates of Prince Jin, Prince Zhe, and Prince Ping. Good. Then go to the table and take out the third bedside record from the right. Find the dates of Consort Zhao's bedside before she was pregnant, Xiao Su ordered. Although Xiao Su wasn't his master, when he spoke he couldn't help but follow his orders. Lao Bai was shocked. This person had a powerful aura that was even stronger than his Imperial Majesty's. Lao Bai picked up the bedside record, and found the one before she was pregnant. But when he flipped through it, he found that the most recent page was missing. He opened the page, and found that there were traces of tearing. He was a little confused and brought it to his Imperial Majesty. Your Majesty, that page is missing. Gentleman Sheng frowned. How could it be missing? After he said that, he remembered Xiao Su's question. Xiao Su wouldn't have brought up the matter of concubines for no reason. He looked at Xiao Su in shock. Are you suspecting that second uncle isn't my grandfather's son? When he said that, Lao Bai and the others' faces changed. Xiao Su coldly said, I didn't say that. Gentleman Sheng immediately turned to ask Lao Bai, when was second uncle born? Lao Bai immediately replied, the 12th of December. The missing bedside record was March. It was September, and he heard that Prince Jing was born prematurely. Hua Ling, who was in charge of investigating this, said, March's record was lost. I found out that Emperor Ming Xian signed an agreement in March because his territory was taken over by a neighboring country. He was in a bad mood, so he got drunk for 3 or 4 nights. One night, he stayed in Consort Zhao's palace, but whether or not he bedded her was recorded. But coincidentally, I found the midwife of Prince Jing. According to her, Prince Jing wasn't born prematurely. He was born after 10 months of pregnancy. Hua Ling looked at them and continued. And in February, Consort Xiao asked Emperor Ming Xian for permission to return home to visit her family. At that time, her childhood sweetheart, Sir Lin, also returned to the capital. When he said that, it was undoubtedly a thunderbolt. If Prince Jing was born at full term, but Consort Xiao wasn't in the palace in February, and Consort Xiao claimed that the child was prematurely born, then the record of March's bedside record disappeared. Gentleman Sheng gripped the armrest. He didn't think that such a dirty thing would happen in the imperial family, imperial concubines and the harem, and it was only discovered after 2 generations. And that fake prince was now a vassal king. He had the power to threaten the imperial family. Although Consort Xiao is dead, that Sir Lin is still alive, Xiao Su suddenly said. Lao Bai, go capture that Sir Lin for me. Gentleman Sheng was furious. Yes. Lao Bai complied, and when he raised his head, he looked at Xiao Su, who had a calm expression on his face. This person was too frightening. He could uncover such a secret just by relying on a lost bedtime record. He couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 352. If that was true, then second uncle's identity as King Jing would be exposed. He would be removed from the royal family. He would be able to take back his troops, and a big threat would be eliminated. It was as easy as blowing off dust. After the order was given, Jun Zixing looked back at Xiao Su, who was sitting in the chair. Although he knew the man in front of him was wearing a human skin mask and had a very ordinary face, every time he saw him, regardless of whether he was wearing a mask or a disguise, Jun Zixing could not help but want to submit to him. He was shocked by his own thoughts. He immediately discarded the thoughts in his mind and turned to look at Xiao Su with a serious expression, telling him what he thought in his heart. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Su gave him a look of disdain. Embarrassed, he couldn't help but ask, "Then what good idea does Prince Ying have?" Xiao Su thought it was a miracle that a person like that could stay on the throne for so long. "If I were you, I would first collect evidence. With both the witnesses and the evidence, there's no need to fear him escaping. However, I advise your majesty not to act rashly and alert the enemy. Let's wait and see. If you're bitten in the back, the losses will outweigh the gains." Xiao Su also didn't want to be long-winded with him. This person was really too ignorant. Jun Xiaoxing realized he had been too reckless. If he had failed to capture second uncle would have said he had wronged him and made up a false accusation against him. That would have put him in an even worse position. He would have given second uncle an excuse to do so. Jun Zixing broke out in a cold sweat. He thought he was being too naive. He took a deep look at Xiao Su. Sure enough, this person had a deep understanding of human nature. His ability to devise strategies and play willful tricks was simply not something he could compare with. "Okay," he immediately said. "I will listen to King of England." After that, Xiao Su gave Jun Zixing a few more pointers. They were all small things that would not attract attention, but Xiao Su was able to find a flaw. After a whole morning, Jun Zixing felt like he had been reborn. He felt like he had been brainwashed. This conversation simply overturned his previous understanding of the politics of the throne. He looked at the person in front of him, who still had an indifferent expression, and couldn't be more surprised. When they fought on the battlefield, he knew that Xiao Su was a rare talent, but he didn't expect that his real talent was not only on the battlefield, but also in politics. It was simply impossible for him to reach Xiao Su's level. What should I do now? He did not forget Xiao Su said he wanted to talk to him about a big plan. Xiao Su squinted his eyes. "The plan is starting to take shape, but we still need you to verify the facts before we can proceed." She could only bite the bullet and reply, "Towards unimportant people, you can ignore them." She felt that her words were asking for a beating, but she felt the body under her hand tremble slightly, as if he was laughing. She was slightly embarrassed. Although Jun Zixing is a little stupid, he's not hopeless. If he's properly trained, he can still become a useful king. However, the main thing is that I don't want to be pestered by him in the coming days. If I can solve it myself, I won't need to rely on others in the future. Xiao Su withdrew the smile on his face and said indifferently, "I understand." Chu Qingyan poked her head out from behind him. "It's better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish." Not bad, this phrase is used well. Xiao Su reached out and patted her head. "But Jun Zixing shouldn't be as bad as you say. It's just that in front of you he seems too small." Chu Qingyan added this in her heart. Then she continued, "But you gave him 2 days. Is that enough?" "We had 1 night last night, and he had 2 days. It's enough." Xiao Su disagreed. Chu Qingyan nodded in agreement. Her big ice cube's requirements were higher than others. As the saying went, a strict teacher produces a fine student. Hopefully, this Jun Zixing would not disappoint. Chapter 353. Knowing that he hadn't had a good rest for the past few nights, Chu Qingyan didn't stop massaging him to soothe him. In fact, she still had some questions in her heart, but she felt that she shouldn't disturb his rest, so she shut her mouth. But before she could speak, Big Ice Block spoke instead. What do you want to ask? Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. She really suspected that he had eyes on the back of his head. But since Big Ice Block had spoken, she didn't stand on ceremony and asked directly. Big Ice Block, if Gentleman Sheng investigates those things in 2 days, how long will we have to stay in Junlan? It had already taken more than half a month to get here from Sichuan. In a few days it would be a month. She couldn't feel at ease. Time passed day by day, as if it was cutting her flesh. But she always felt that Big Ice Block didn't take this matter to heart at all. She felt that it was as if the eunuch was more anxious than the emperor. Xiao Su knew what she was worried about. He reached out and patted the little hand on her shoulder. His voice was a little soft. Don't worry, it won't be long. Chu Qingyan sighed softly in her heart. How could such a big mess be solved in just a few days? But since Big Ice Block had spoken, she knew that he wasn't a person who spoke empty words, so she put down her worries for the time being. Chu Qingyan turned to him and asked, after we finish lunch later, can you go to sleep first? She knew that his body had reached its limit. If it hadn't been poisoned, she wouldn't have been too worried about Big Ice Block's body, but it was a critical period recently, and nothing could be done carelessly. Moreover, she had been standing at the side door for so long, but he hadn't noticed her presence. It was enough to see that he was too tired. Her tone was like an adult coaxing a child. Xiao Su smiled. When did his little fellow grow up and do adult things? However, the hope in her eyes made him unable to reject her. Chu Qingyan smiled and immediately asked Xining to bring in the food. Just now she had already asked Xining to prepare. Big Ice Block didn't like to let the palace servants serve him in the hall, so she sent them all to the kitchen. There was strength in numbers, and the food was quickly prepared. Chu Qingyan attentively put food in his bowl. Looking at the mountain of food in his bowl, she was very satisfied. Big Ice Block used to live in the barracks and had eaten all kinds of food, whether it was wild vegetables, tree bark, or snowy water. He had shared the joys and hardships with the soldiers. This was what she had heard from Turin later. At that time, she was forced to eat carrots by Big Ice Cube. In order to resist, she also gave him carrots, green peppers, chili, and other things that she didn't like to eat. She wanted to see him embarrass himself because he didn't eat them, but she didn't expect that he didn't refuse. He even said that she would eat as much as he wanted. After learning about Big Ice Block's past, she felt a bit more admiration for him and a bit more pity. When she happily put food in his bowl, Huoling's jaw almost fell off and Mu Ling's eyes almost went blind. Because their master was obsessed with cleanliness, a very strong obsession with cleanliness. It was fine in the barracks, but when the conditions allowed it, his food was very expensive, not to mention other people using used chopsticks to put food in his bowl. But Chu Qingyan had done it, and she was sitting there perfectly fine after doing it. Chu Qingyan's strength, or rather her position in their master's heart, was enough to make them look at her in a new light. Moreover, their master seemed to be enjoying it very much. He would occasionally put food in his bowl for the little princess, but of course, it was food that the little princess didn't like to eat. Anyway, on the way here, their knowledge was shattered again and again, and then it was reformed again and again. After eating, Chu Qingyan felt that she had to go out for a walk to help with digestion. There was nothing else to do, so Xiao Su allowed her to make the decision. Walking in the sunny courtyard, after eating and drinking to their heart's content, they felt warm all over. The sun was a bit glaring, but it wasn't very hot. It could only be considered warm. After walking a few steps, Chu Qingyan leaned against a large tree. Xiao Su was standing at her side and seeing that her cloak was crooked, he straightened it out. At this time, Chu Qingyan seemed to hear the sound of a sword cutting through the air, and turned to look at the source of the sound. She saw Jin Xian bathed in the sun as he waved the long sword in his hand. Every move was very serious. It was clearly the middle of winter, but his forehead was covered in fine beads of sweat. It could be seen that he had practiced for a while. Xiao Su followed her gaze and softly said, "I have to admit, you've taken in a pretty good subordinate." It was rare to hear the Big Ice Cube praise her, so Chu Qingyan had a smug look on her face. "That's because I'm a talent scout who can find a fine horse." Xiao Su smiled without saying a word. Chu Qingyan felt that the Big Ice Cube was laughing at her, but she didn't mind. Instead, she turned to look at him with a serious expression. Big Ice Cube, thank you. Jean Xian said that you gave him a sword manual. I saw that he seemed to like it very much. Xiao Su patted her head. That sword manual is just a piece of waste paper to this king. If he thinks it's good, then it's good. He was the one who had taken the initiative to give it to Jean Xian to practice, but now he was acting so aloof. She couldn't help laughing in her heart. She felt that this Big Ice Cube who said one thing and meant another was really cute. Big Ice Cube, did you give the sword manual to Jean Xian because you think he's a good seedling? Chu Qingyan tilted her head to look at him with a bright smile. It depends on the person. Xiao Su gave an ambiguous answer. Chu Qingyan thought that she had guessed correctly. The Big Ice Cube had recognized Jean Xian's strength. But in Xiao Su's eyes, only the people around her were worthy of his attention. If it was anyone else, no matter how smart or strong they were, he would not put them in his eyes. This was Xiao Su protecting his own. If he wanted to protect a person, the flowers and plants around her would also receive a bit of grace. After standing in the sun for a while, Chu Qingyan felt that her clothes were a bit hot. She looked up at the person facing her. He didn't have any outstanding facial features, but he always gave off a kind of mesmerizing charm. She tilted her head and thought, could this be the manliness that her roommates always talked about? She couldn't help but laugh when she thought about it. Her laughter clearly alarmed Xiao Su, who was in deep thought. He raised his brows as he looked at her. It seemed like a person who could amuse themselves. Chu Qingyan stopped laughing and looked at the time. She then looked at the Big Ice Cube's red eyes and immediately made a decision. Big Ice Cube, let's go back to sleep. I'll tell you a story. Xiao Su nodded without even thinking. When the palace servants who were sweeping the leaves in the yard heard their conversation, they froze in place. Sleep together? This is too bold and unrestrained. This was the imperial palace. Also, that little girl was too young. God, he felt like he didn't understand this world anymore. Chapter 354. Of course, Chu Qingyan doesn't know that her unintentional words have set off a small whirlwind. There are rumors in the palace that the new emperor's guest has a hobby. That is, a pedophile. But because that side hall is tightly guarded, no one dares to investigate. Moreover, the palace servant who spread the rumor quickly disappeared from the palace. All the palace servants immediately shut up, and no one mentions this matter again. Chu Qingyan naturally doesn't know what happened afterwards. At this time, she is holding the 36 stratagems that Xiao Su gave her before, flipping through the pages one by one. After seeing the contents of one of the pages, her eyes are filled with joy. Big Ice Cube, today I'll tell you a secret plot. Xiao Su expresses that he has no objection. In fact, he is not a child. He doesn't need someone to accompany him, and he doesn't need a bedtime story. However, he doesn't dislike the little fellow taking the initiative to tell him a story. Moreover, he likes the little fellow's voice. It's very clean, unlike the voices he heard in the past. It's almost hard to understand, and he needs to analyze it one by one. Later on, after getting used to it, he can also listen to the speaker's thoughts. If you lose something, you gain something. It's just that this is too tiring. He doesn't want to live like that anymore. The little fellow's voice is already cheerful. He closes his eyes and smiles slightly. In fact, in the little fellow's world, there seems to be nothing to be sad about. When she learns to sing sad songs on the road, she can turn them into her own joyful tune. Aside from being frightened along the way with him, she has always been very strong. This kind of little fellow is also what he wanted to cultivate in the beginning. Contentment brings joy, it's enough. When Chu Qingyan happily finishes telling a story, and is about to turn to the next page, she finds that the Big Ice Cube has already fallen asleep. She breathes a sigh of relief, puts the book to the side, and then props up her chin to size him up. The faint green color under his eyes makes her feel a little distressed. Even an omnipotent person can get hurt, and can get sick. She reaches out to pull up the quilt to cover his hands, and then tiptoes to the door. Looking back, she sees that he is still sleeping, and then goes out to close the door. This kind of good weather is suitable for sleeping, and also suitable for strolling. For the past 2 days she hadn't gone to see her mother properly. Turning around, she walked towards her parents' room. Chu Qingyan knocks on the door and gets a response from inside. She pushes the door open and goes in. At a glance, she saw her mother lying on the bed. Chu Qingyan immediately walked over and took her mother's hand. She asked with concern, "Mother, are you well?" "Much better." Mrs. Chu smiled and patted her hand. "You were still coughing a few days ago, but you're not coughing anymore today. Kongling's medicine is really effective." Mrs. Chu frowned and said, "Why are your hands so cold? Come and warm them up." Chu Qingyan hurriedly shook her head. "No, no, no. I still don't want to pass the cold to you. What if you're about to recover and I make it worse?" However, when she saw that her mother's complexion was much rosier than a few days ago, she felt relieved. When Mr. Chu came back, he was very happy to see his daughter. Kai, look at what father has in his hands." Chu Qingyan curiously looked over. Mr. Chu opened his hands and saw a few colorful stones lying in his palms. Chu Qingyan's eyes twitched. "Father, it's so cold. You're going to pick up stones? Aren't you afraid that your fingers will freeze?" Mr. Chu shook his head. "Your bodies are too precious. I'm a man and I'm not afraid." With that, Mr. Chu sneezed. Chu Qingyan and Mrs. Chu couldn't help but laugh. Mr. Chu touched his nose. This sneeze had exposed him too quickly. "By the way, Kai, where's His Highness?" Mrs. Chu asked. When Mr. Chu heard this, he immediately said, "Yes, where's the scallion? Where is he? I haven't played with him in a long time." Chu Qingyan took her father's hand, then turned to her mother and said, "His Highness hasn't rested much these days because of Junlan. He's already asleep." "It's been hard on His Highness." Mrs. Chu nodded. She had more or less heard about what happened in Junlan, and felt that the King of England must be under a lot of pressure. She turned to her husband and said, "Yuan, if there's nothing else, don't disturb His Highness. He's very busy." Mr. Chu puffed up his cheeks, and could only compromise in the end. "When he's done, I'll ask him to weave a fishing net. I heard that there's a big river in Jiang with a lot of fish in it." Chu Qingyan smiled when she heard this. Her father still hadn't forgotten about the fishing net. It was hard to imagine the big ice cube weaving a net. It should be very fun. Ahem, how could she think like that? With the big ice cube's noble status, how could it be possible that he would weave a net for her father? But why did she subconsciously think that the big ice cube would still do that? She felt that she was really letting her imagination run wild. In order not to disturb her mother's rest, Chu Qingyan chatted a little more and left. Today's sun was really too bright and beautiful. It was much colder than the previous 2 days. When she reached the long corridor, she saw Yin Luo carrying a basin of water from afar. She hid behind a pillar and observed for a while. Then she stroked her chin and wondered why Sister Yen Luo had entered Ethereal's room. There must be something going on. She smiled maliciously and immediately followed her. She was about to hide by the door and eavesdrop when she was unexpectedly startled by Mu Ling, who had walked up to her. "What are you doing here?" Chu Qingyan asked in a low voice. Mu Ling crossed her arms and retorted, "Shouldn't I be the one asking you that?" Chu Qingyan knew that she was in the wrong. She straightened her body and whispered, "I was curious, so I followed you." She pointed inside. Mu Ling smiled when she heard this. "Ethereal is sick. Miss Chung is taking care of him." Chu Qingyan suddenly understood. No wonder Sister Yen Luo had brought a basin of hot water in. But isn't this called a friend in need is a friend indeed? Mu Ling stroked her chin. Chu Qingyan shook her finger. That's not necessarily true. Every time the two of them gave people the feeling that they were about to reconcile, they would immediately fall out with each other. Therefore, there were some things that couldn't be said too early. Mu Ling nodded in agreement. Many disasters. Then Mu Ling left because she still had important matters to attend to. Chu Qingyan looked at Mu Ling's departing figure, and suddenly felt a little lost. Turin was paying close attention to the movements of the 4 vassals. Hua Ling was collecting information on the officials of Junlan. Yin Luo was taking care of Ethereal. Her father was taking care of her mother. Jean Xian was practicing martial arts. Xining was preparing dinner. Mu Ling also had something to do. She was the only one who seemed to have nothing to do. Could it be that she was a rice worm who only knew how to eat her fill? Although this was her goal in the past, she had long since abandoned this idea. It seemed that her plan had to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. She couldn't let it go on like this. After Chu Qingyan thought it through, she was about to leave when she heard the door behind her open. Chapter 355. Chu Qingyan turned around and saw Yin Luo standing at the door with a basin of water in her hand. She saw a flash of uneasiness on Yin Luo's face. She chuckled and pretended not to know anything. She looked at Yin Luo curiously. "Sister Yin Luo, why are you here?" Cheng Yin Luo tightened her grip on the basin. She felt as though she had nowhere to hide. However, when she saw the teasing look in the girl's eyes, Cheng Yin Luo's worries dissipated. All that was left was helplessness and anger. Cheng Yin Luo was annoyed and amused at the same time. "Come on, you saw it from outside. Tell me, what do you want to know?" She turned around and closed the door. Then she walked slowly to the side. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue and followed her to the kitchen. "Didn't you say that you would ignore him? Why are you in his room?" Chu Qingyan asked, even though she already knew the answer. She knew that Yin Luo had a sharp tongue but a soft heart, but she just wanted to pry into her thoughts. Or rather, she wanted Yin Luo to see her true feelings. Cheng Yin Luo placed the basin on the stove and crossed her arms. "Can you say that I'm kind-hearted and can't bear to see him fall sick?" Chu Qingyan shrugged. "If you think that saying it will make you feel better, I'll force myself to listen." "You?" Cheng Yin Luo felt uneasy after being exposed. However, she quickly admitted, "He fell sick mostly because of me. I can't possibly leave him in the lurch and bite the hand that feeds me, right? I can't do such a thing." Chu Qingyan felt that Cheng Yin Luo's words were too exaggerated. Chu Qingyan didn't intend to beat around the bush. She got straight to the point and asked, "Then what do you think? Are you really not going to forgive him?" "I don't think so." "How many times have you asked me the same question? Don't you find it annoying?" Cheng Yin Luo glared at her fiercely. Chu Qingyan shook her head. "I've hit a sore spot. You're hopping mad." "Ha!" Before she could finish laughing, the person in front of her poked her forehead. Chu Qingyan covered her head and looked at her, but she heard her laugh with her hands on her waist. "This is called poking, okay?" Chu Qingyan felt that this was simply too depressing. This person was really good at changing the topic. However, just as she was about to start the second round of questioning, Cheng Yin Luo's smile slowly disappeared. Her entire being seemed to be shrouded in loneliness. Chu Qingyan was a little stunned. This was the first time she had seen Ming Yan's disappointed side. At this moment she said, "Little girl, if an apology could be exchanged for forgiveness, then there wouldn't be so many grudges in this world. If you don't care too much about it, then perhaps you can really not care about other people's apologies and reply that it's fine. But if you can't say it's fine, it's probably because you can't accept it." Cheng Yin Luo leaned against the door and crossed her arms. She was no longer as carefree as before. Instead, she seemed to be really cold and couldn't help but hug herself tightly. Her expression was a little dreamy, as though she had sunk into the past. Chu Qingyan closed her mouth. Actually, she didn't know what had happened between the two of them. She had only seen how Ethereal had tried her best to save her, and how she had resisted. In her opinion, when the two of them stood together, it could be said that they were a match made in heaven. That was why she had tried her best to matchmake the two of them. However, everything was just her own imagination. She didn't fully understand the past between the two of them. If she didn't prescribe the right medicine, how could it be cured? Or perhaps, the gap between the two of them was unbridgeable? Chu Qingyan felt that she had been too idealistic. She didn't understand the two of them in depth at all. She might have made a mistake by trying to matchmake them on her own accord. "I'm sorry. Perhaps my good intentions have made things worse." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but lower her head. She felt that it was good, but perhaps to Sister Yin Luo, it was actually a form of embarrassment? Cheng Yin Luo hadn't expected that her words would cause the little girl to blame herself. She suddenly panicked and scratched her head. She didn't know how to comfort her. In the end, She simply held her hand and said in despair, "Little girl, do you want to hear the story between me and him?" Chu Qingyan immediately raised her head and raised her eyebrows. She smiled slyly and said, "Yes. I really want to." The corners of Cheng Yinluo's mouth stiffened. Why did she have the misconception that she had been deceived? Were you pretending to be weak to win my sympathy? No. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and swore solemnly. Cheng Yinluo couldn't be bothered to argue with her. Thus, the two of them sat on the stone bench in the courtyard. 10 years ago, my father had just taken over the sect. However, at that time, he was already very famous. Morongju entered the sect at that time, and was also my father's first disciple. At that time, I was rebellious and felt that my father's mind was focused on studying medical skills. He didn't care about me and my mother at all, so I resented him. When he asked me if I wanted to study medicine, I actually refused. At that time, Morongju entered the sect. Although he was only 8 or 9 years old, he seemed to be born in an aristocratic family. He was well-mannered and radiated brilliance wherever he went. People couldn't help but approach him. Chu Qingyan looked at her with a gentle expression, and a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Chu Qingyan felt that Yinluo's gentleness was rare. This was the first time she had heard Yinluo's evaluation of ethereal. "What happened after that?" she asked. "But I was too arrogant at that time, and wanted to compete with him. I also took the initiative to tell my father that I wanted to study medicine. I still haven't forgotten my father's shocked expression when he heard that. It was really funny. He said that he had tried so hard for so many years, but he couldn't compete with an outsider for a month. However, I also became my father's second last disciple. Later, she found out that it was just because she wanted to have common topics with him. He was like a big brother. He was good at taking care of people and learned medicine quickly. However, the direction of my study was different from his. He made and detoxified poisons, while I practiced medicine to save people. However, this didn't affect our competition. As the sect gradually grew stronger, the number of disciples gradually increased. There was also a lot of gossip in a crowded place. His looks were outstanding, and he was liked by the junior sisters. However, he was a humble person, and he was very tolerant of those women who used the excuse of discussing medical skills to get close to him. I lost to him every time we competed in medical skills, so I always lost to him. However, he tolerated me. Now that I think about it, he was really too good to me back then. Cheng Yinluo recalled the past and said in a sweet and sentimental tone, "Is that how you fell in love with him?" Chu Qingyan asked, supporting her chin with her hand. It turned out that the relationship between the two of them was like this. She felt that it was quite romantic. Chapter 356. When a talented, intelligent, gentle and modest young man intrudes into my life, it's too difficult not to be moved at that age. Cheng Yinluo sighed softly. It's just that I didn't realize my feelings at that time. It was only after an incident that I completely understood what I was chasing in the past. It turned out that it wasn't about winning or losing, but about the way he looked at her. What happened? Chu Qingyan couldn't be more curious after hearing her words. Cheng Yinluo pursed her lips and smiled. My father is the head of a clan, so he thought that I must have enjoyed special treatment. Moreover, Morongju treated me well, so some people, especially women, were not convinced. One of them tricked me to the back of the mountain and trapped me in a fishing net, unable to move. Unfortunately, the sky turned dark and it started to rain heavily. You should know that the nights in the mountains are very cold. Coupled with the heavy rain, it was extremely cold. How can you still laugh? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at Cheng Yinluo. Just as she was engrossed in her story, she actually kept her in suspense. Cheng Yinluo smiled. Just to make me more pitiful. At that time, I was soaking wet, and the thunder was loud and there were howls of wolves. I thought I was going to die here, and was about to lose all hope. At that moment, I heard someone calling me, so I immediately responded. I didn't expect the person to be him. At that time, he saw her in a sorry state and shivering all over. He immediately untied her, and took off his coat to wrap her. Xiaoyan, how are you feeling? His voice was trembling. She thought it was because of the strong wind. Very cold. She bit her lips with a pale face, unable to exert any strength. Bear with it, I'll take you back. Seeing that she couldn't walk anymore, he immediately squatted down and carried her on his back. Then they walked down the mountain step by step. Unfortunately, the rain was too heavy at that time, so heavy that they couldn't open their eyes. The soil was mixed with the water and became loose. He missed a step, and the two of them rolled down the cliff. In order to protect her, he was cut by the mountain rocks several times, but she was safe and sound in his arms. It wasn't easy to get out after falling down the cliff, so they found a safe place to hide from the rain and recuperate. She had a fever during the night. He endured the pain and took care of her for the entire night. When she woke up the next day, her fever had subsided. When she opened her eyes, she turned her head and saw the first ray of sunlight shining on his body, even though he was covered in mud and had fallen from grace. But in her eyes, he was more handsome and gentle than ever. Young Master Qianqian was as gentle as jade. That's probably the case. How romantic. Chu Qingyan's eyes sparkled. That's romantic? Aren't your expectations a little too low? Although she said that, the corners of Cheng Yanluo's mouth twitched. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at her. Don't be so greedy, okay? What happened after that? That's how you fell in love with him, right? But I'm more interested to know why you two separated. The smile on Cheng Yanluo's face slowly faded. We had a tacit understanding for a few years. Father had already prepared to hand over the sect to him in the future. I thought that this would last forever. Unfortunately, one day, he received a letter from the border telling me that he had to leave. I asked him when he would be back and he said. Cheng Yanluo smiled bitterly. The date of his return was uncertain, and he might not come back. At this point, Chu Qingyan suddenly understood. Ethereal must have received a letter from the ice cube at that time. She remembered that the ice cube had a tough battle 6 years ago, and he had suffered serious injuries. Ethereal must have gone to support him at that time. No one knew when they would return from the battlefield. That was why Ethereal had told her that. Between me and the heavy responsibility, he didn't choose me. Cheng Yanluo smiled sadly. I think Ethereal cared a lot about you, but he couldn't ignore Her Highness's life and death. Chu Qingyan defended him. Little girl, you don't like anyone. You don't understand. When I'm most happy and looking forward to our future together, this news is like a bolt from the blue. I'm not a person who doesn't know what's right and what's wrong. If he asked me to wait, I would. But he told me not to wait. His feelings for me are only due to the friendship between us. Haha. Cheng Yanluo chuckled, but her eyes were red. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Maybe he thought he. Little girl, you don't have to defend him. If he said that because he was afraid that he wouldn't come back, then why didn't he come looking for me in the past 6 years? With the fierce cavalry's ability, it shouldn't be difficult to find someone. Cheng Yanluo sneered. Chu Qingyan shut her mouth. What Cheng Yanluo said was right. She wanted to ask Ethereal what he was thinking. Cheng Yanluo rubbed her eyes. She felt a stinging sensation in her eyes, but she quickly forced it back down. When he left, she hated him, but she couldn't help but worry about him. When she found out that he was safe and sound, her hatred was rekindled. Forget it. It's all in the past. 6 years can change a lot of people. I'm no longer the silly girl he can order around. Now that I know he's alive, it's enough. Let's just leave it at that. Chu Qingyan looked at her deeply. This woman looked strong on the surface, but she was actually the most gentle and kind on the inside. What do you plan to do in the future? Were they just going to let it go like this? I'll go back to the clinic after I'm done with all of you. I won't refuse the blind dates arranged by my father. Maybe I'll meet someone I like. Cheng Yanluo stood up and patted her clothes. She smiled faintly. In this world, there's no such thing as only one person. Let nature take its course. Cheng Yanluo left before she left. That's good too. Chu Qingyan sighed. After Cheng Yanluo's figure disappeared, Chu Qingyan turned around and looked at the person standing under the tall tree. Did you hear what Sister Yanluo said just now? She smiled faintly. He was handsome in a white robe, but his face was very pale. It was obvious that he hadn't recovered from his cold. Yes. He didn't see her when he woke up, so he came to look for her. He didn't expect to hear those words. Those were her heartfelt words that she had never revealed to him. A woman's love, hatred, and resentment for him. And now, she didn't want to persist and let it go. After his shock, only desolation was left in his eyes. I think Sister Yanluo still has feelings for you. You. Before Chu Qingyan could finish, Ethereal turned around. Thank you, young princess. You don't have to waste your time on us in the future. Since she had chosen to let it go, what right did he have to pester her? Chu Qingyan was speechless as she watched his lonely figure slowly leave. Footsteps sounded beside her, and stopped beside her. She turned around and hugged him. Big Iceberg, did I do something bad with good intentions again? Chapter 357. Xiao Su stood beside her, and placed one hand on her shoulder, while the other caressed her head. Why do you say that? She buried her head in his chest and said softly, if I wasn't curious, Sister Yanluo wouldn't have told me about it. If she didn't tell me, Ethereal wouldn't have heard about it. That way, he wouldn't have this feeling of having nothing to live for. You're thinking too much. This has nothing to do with you. He can only blame himself for running around when he's sick. Although Xiao Su hadn't overheard their conversation, he had an extraordinary ability to make deductions. She was slightly taken aback. How could he say that about his subordinates? Big Ice Block was scheming. Xiao Su didn't notice the change in her expression and continued, besides, my subordinates aren't that weak. Chu Qingyan tightened her arms. She could feel the warmth from the Big Ice Block who had just woken up. She couldn't help but want to draw more warmth from him. I still feel uneasy, she mumbled. Take care of yourself. Let them deal with their own problems. Xiao Su didn't understand why she was so concerned about other people's affairs. Chu Qingyan didn't like the Big Ice Block's attitude. She raised her head and poked his chest. Big Ice Block, Ethereal's matter is more or less related to you. He left Yanluo because of his responsibility. That's why the two of you acted like strangers when you met today. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Are you blaming me? These words were obviously threatening, and Chu Qingyan immediately buried herself in his arms again. No, I'm just stating the facts. Xiao Su chuckled when he saw the woman burrowing into his arms like an ostrich. However, his tone became serious. Qingyan, you have to understand that some things can't be changed because of your status. You have two choices. Do it or don't do it. However, responsibility will make you understand that there are some things that you have to do. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she was slightly taken aback. She clenched her fingers and grabbed his clothes, but her gaze froze. So all these years, Big Ice Cube had been doing what he had to do based on the responsibility on his shoulders. When he was a child, other people would get into trouble and jump up and down, but he would burn the midnight oil to study. When he was young, other people were doted on by their parents, but he led his troops into battle, going through fire and fire. Now, while others were enjoying wealth and glory, he had to face the vermin of the imperial court and be exterminated. Actually, if this responsibility is too heavy, I'd be like Sister Yanluo. I'd rather you not have it, she said softly. But in this quiet world, his hearing was so good. How could he not hear it? He just pretended not to hear it. She was still young. When she grew up and had more ties, she would understand. I'm hungry. Let's go eat. She let go of his hand and looked at him with her hands behind her back. Her recovery ability had always been stronger than others. Yes, he replied. Big Ice Cube, will it snow in Junlan? No, it's warmer than Sichuan. Then will it snow in Sichuan? Yes. It might already be snowing. Unfortunately, I can't see it. Next year. You'll be able to see it. He blurted out that he would take her to see it next year, but unfortunately, the word stopped at the tip of his tongue. Without the antidote, it was hard to say what would happen in the future. Okay. Chu Qingyan moved closer to him and mischievously blocked the cold wind. Xiao Su didn't argue with her. Instead, he pulled open his cloak and wrapped it around her, blocking the wind for her. Although it didn't snow in Junlan, the cold wind was bone-chilling. After Chu Qingyan and Jun Jiqing returned to the palace, the imperial study was lit up again. Your Majesty, we've caught Wu Qing and his family. Wu Qing passed away last year, but his son and daughter-in-law are still alive. Lao Bai reported with his head bowed. Wu Qing was the former chancellor of the Supreme Court. According to Xiao Su, he was a suspect in the poisoning of Emperor Mingxian. How is it? Jun Zixing paused and looked up at him. Lao Bai sighed softly and said slowly, Your Majesty, the King of England is very accurate. He announced that King Ping was indeed involved in the poisoning of Your Majesty. Wu Qing's son confessed that King Ping instructed their father to do so. He wanted to frame others and get rid of King Ping's suspicions. After their father did this, he used his old age as an excuse to retire and return to his hometown. King Ping even gave them a large sum of money to settle down and guaranteed that they wouldn't have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of their lives. After saying that, Lao Bai saw His Majesty's gloomy expression. He handed over a confession. This is the confession of Wu Qing's family members. Jun Zixing took it and skimmed through it. His face was so dark that it could drip water. King Ping is too hateful. So he's just a wolf in a scholar's clothing. He slammed the paper on the table. The humiliation of being deceived surged in his heart. It seemed that King Ping's various gestures of goodwill towards him were all ambitious. It was just to gain his trust and achieve his goal. Your Majesty, please calm down. You don't have to hurt yourself because of such a person. Lao Bai immediately stepped forward to persuade him. Jun Zixing raised his hand, indicating that he didn't need to say anything else. How are the other matters? We've caught the ringleader of the rumor mongers. We're interrogating him now, but we haven't gotten any results yet. As for that young Master Lin, we've found his whereabouts, but it'll take some time to bring him back. Jun Zixing nodded. Hurry up. We can't delay any longer. Yes. Lao Bai agreed. He understood how urgent the matter was. It could be said that they were in a race against time. In the afternoon of the second day, Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan sat on the couch and played chess. Hua Ling stood at the side and reported, Master, King Jing and King Jin have formed an alliance. This is a secret letter from the Wind Division. Xiao Su took it. After reading it, he said calmly, It seems that the two of them can't wait any longer. But this is good too. It'll save us a lot of effort to deal with them. Chu Qingyan took the letter. After reading it, she didn't understand what Big Ice Cube meant. Although she had sorted out the information with them for the whole night, and had a good understanding of Junlan, she still didn't understand how Big Ice Cube would help Jun Zixing take back his military power. At this moment, the sound of Your Majesty has arrived interrupted Chu Qingyan's train of thought. She turned to look at the person who was holding a chess piece and preparing to play. Counting the time, today was the deadline he gave Jun Zixing. Jun Zixing is here. Chu Qingyan prepared to get off the couch. He has legs. He'll walk in himself. Xiao Su said calmly as he placed his chess piece. Chu Qingyan felt that she wasn't as strong-willed as Big Ice Cube. She obediently got off the couch and stood at the side, waiting for Jun Zixing's arrival. Jun Zixing stepped into the inner hall with Lao Bai. When he saw Xiao Su, his expression relaxed. King of England, I found out what happened. With that, Jun Zixing asked Lao Bai to hand the information in his hands to Xiao Su. Hua Ling took the papers and placed them on the table, but Xiao Su didn't reach out to take a look. Okay, then let's begin. Xiao Su put down his chess piece and said calmly. Chapter 358. When Jun Zixing saw his actions, he immediately understood that Xiao Su already knew about these things. It was just that he wanted to convince Jun Zixing so that he could verify it himself. Otherwise, with Jun Zixing's knowledge, he would never believe the truth of these things. He admired Xiao Su again. This kind of person was really good at playing with people's hearts. He grasped every detail of Jun Zixing's thoughts just right. In fact, Jun Zixing was wrong. Xiao Su just didn't want him to be suspicious and noisy when he was planning. He also didn't like others to criticize him when he was doing things. Then, Your Majesty, please tell me about the recent movements of these vassal kings, Xiao Su asked. Jun Zixing nodded. King Jing and King Jin formed an alliance yesterday. I've planted spies around them, but because they're too cautious, this is all the spies could find out. King Jing and King Jin were friends when they were young. However, they valued benefits more now, so it was reasonable for them to form an alliance. King Zhe has recently sent troops to suppress bandits. Instead of suppressing bandits, it's more accurate to say that he wants to move his troops to a town near the capital. It'll be more convenient for him to act then. King Zhe didn't report it and took the initiative to lead troops there. It could be said that he was looking down on the imperial power. However, Jun Zixing couldn't criticize him in these troubled times. It was already very sad that the emperor had to go to this extent. King Ping has been very well behaved recently. He hasn't done anything. No matter how his spies investigated, King Ping was like a cocoon that was wrapped up from head to toe. They couldn't find a single flaw. Although Xiao Su wasn't very satisfied with what Jun Zixing said. Not everyone was his subordinate and could investigate everything clearly. He pondered for a moment before saying, Turin, report to His Majesty the specific information we've gathered recently. Yes. Turin bowed and said to Jun Zixing. According to what I've learned, King Jing and King Jin's alliance plan to send assassins into the palace in 7 days. They'll send a large number of troops into the palace in the name of protecting the emperor. The veins on Gentleman Sheng's face bulged. These two traitors. Your Majesty, please don't be angry, Turin continued. Prince Zhe has already sent troops to enter Xiang City, and is quietly waiting for Prince Jing and Prince Jing's actions, preparing to follow them. Jun Zixing's expression turned even uglier. What about King Ping? Although King Ping is biding his time, there are only 60,000 soldiers left in his fief. The other 60,000 have already disguised themselves and are preparing to sneak into the capital. Turin reported truthfully. Jun Zixing slammed the table. These people are too audacious. They're simply disgraceful. Chu Qingyan was speechless at Jun Zixing, who only knew how to scold people. Now that all the problems were listed, the key was how to solve them. However, Gentleman Sheng wasn't that weak, and he immediately came back to his senses and said to Xiao Su, It seems that in 7 days, these people will be in chaos. What should we do? These people were already on the verge of making a move. As long as one of them made a move, the others wouldn't be able to sit still and wait for changes. No one was willing to fall behind, because this was an important moment. It meant that whoever could rush to that position the fastest would have that position. Manpower was important, but timing was even more important. Moreover, they were in such a situation where they were evenly matched. Jun Zixing was very worried about the development of the situation. We can't let them form such a situation. You only have a few 100,000 soldiers under your command, and they have at least 400,000 in total. Therefore, we can't fight them head-on. We can only use our wits. Xiao Su analyzed. I'd like to hear the details. Jun Zixing lowered his head slightly and asked, putting down the airs of a ruler. First, we have to break the alliance between Prince Jing and Prince Jin. It's best to let them fight each other. Xiao Su paused. I don't think Your Majesty has forgotten Prince Jing's true identity. We can make use of it now. Jun Zixing had no clue at first, but when he heard Xiao Su's reminder, he immediately understood. You're saying that we should let Prince Jin know that Prince Jing doesn't have the blood of the Junlan imperial family flowing in him. Given Prince Jin's insatiable nature, he'll definitely use this opportunity to swallow up Prince Jing's troops. When the time comes, he'll submit a memorial to us. We can't take back Prince Jing's military power so quickly, so we'll have to let him temporarily control it. But won't that benefit Prince Jin in the end? Xiao Su raised his brows and glanced at him. Did I say that Prince Jin would definitely survive? Swords had no eyes. When two people fought, it wasn't impossible for both sides to suffer heavy losses. Jun Zixing immediately gave him a thumbs up. Then these 200,000 soldiers will return to our hands. It's quite simple, but as for the specifics, this prince's subordinates will assist Your Majesty in arranging people to do it, Xiao Su said calmly. Good. We were worried at first, but with your words, we can rest assured. A smile appeared on Jun Zixing's face. Then 7 days later, we'll be able to get rid of these two major problems. No, 7 days is too long. We'll bring it forward to 3 days. But didn't they arrange for assassins to kidnap us? If we bring it forward, won't we be alerting them? Jun Zixing was worried that Prince Sei and Prince Ping wouldn't make a move after receiving the news. When the time came, there would be even more uncertainties. Chu Qingyan immediately knew that Jun Zixing wanted to take advantage of the 7 days later to get rid of these 4 people in one fell swoop. His appetite was too big. Be careful that a man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Xiao Su didn't take Jun Zixing's worries to heart. 7 days later, the imperial family will perform a ritual. They originally planned to make a move on that day, but as the astrology bureau said, that day is inauspicious, so it's not impossible to bring it forward. Hu Ling added, and this subordinate has already found the hiding place of those assassins. When the time comes, as long as we capture them and have our own people impersonate them, Your Majesty's life won't be in any danger. As soon as Hu Ling finished speaking, Chu Qingyan immediately understood the Big Ice Cube's plan. It was to bring forward the ritual so that Prince Jing and Prince Jin would order the assassins to carry out the assassination in advance. The 2 allied armies would quickly rush to the capital. On the way, they would deliberately reveal Prince Jing's identity to Prince Jin. When internal strife arose, the 2 would kill each other. Then, they would let the assassins die silently and bear the blame themselves. As for Prince Sei and Prince Ping, because they heard the news of the rescue mission, they wouldn't know what happened between Prince Jing and Prince Jin in a short period of time. They would only focus on fighting for the throne and see who would arrive at the capital first. The plan was perfect, but they couldn't make a single mistake. Chu Qingyan understood. And as the emperor, Jun Zixing understood even more. What a brilliant plan! Jun Zixing couldn't help but praise. Xiao Su lowered his head and sipped his tea, ignoring Jun Zixing's praise. After Jun Zixing understood the plan, he still couldn't figure it out. Prince Sei is naturally suspicious, and Prince Ping hides his abilities. How should we deal with them? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.